I lay on my deathbed, surrounded by family, and let my mind drift across the last 115 years of my life. Born in a tiny village to a barely functional family. School, college, a job I didn't really care about, a wife I loved, kids, grandkids, even great-grandkids. On paper, it looked like the kind of life people brag about. Respectable, long full of milestones. But the truth was simpler. It all fell hollow. The world always seemed slightly off to me. Flat, colorless, like someone had forgotten to add flavor to the soup. Not miserable, just wrong. The only moments I ever felt at ease were when I lost myself in fantasy. Still, I wasn't the type to whine about it. I lived, worked, raised a family, and grew old the way a man is supposed to. Eventually the day came when I felt the last thread of life loosen. I looked out at my horde of descendants and spoke through a tired smile. I'm glad I get to die the right way. Old with all of you here. Look after each other. Don't waste time fighting among yourselves. Most of them nodded, smiling through tears. A few already looked resigned. They'd known this was coming. I turned to a younger grandson. And Ivan, stop being a little coward and ask her to marry you already. A few snorts of laughter echoed around the room. I let my eyes close for the last time and had one final thought. God, I hope the next place isn't terrible. Or so I thought. Where the hell am I? I was sitting upright in a lavish office. My entire body glowed faintly. Is this my soul? Correct. My gaze snapped to the old man sitting behind the desk. Except my gut insisted this wasn't a man at all. Correct again, you old fart. Ass, I thought, snorting. He snorted right back. Thank the stars you're not groveling. I hate that. Well, I'm already dead, I said. Not much left to fear. Not here, anyway. Oh boy, is this what I think it is? You catch on fast. Hardly surprising, considering your interests. All right, hit me. Straightforward good. Souls make a choice when they die. Most choose rest. Your soul, however, practically screamed to live again. So you will. And before you ask, yes, this works even with the countless souls dying every moment. Existence is infinite. Literally. He continued before I could react. Since your soul is stronger than average, you'll keep some memories and all your life experience. Considering where you're going, I'll also give you a boost to your magical talent. I grinned. Hell yes. Quite. Now, about your destination. You're being sent to a younger multiverse, Tamriel. Skyrim, specifically, could be worse. Skyrim's one of my favorites. Indeed. Imagine if you ended up in a slice of life world. I'd off myself immediately. I already lived one boring life. Good thing you're not going there then. But a heads up, you won't be Dragonborn. Akatosh only chooses natives for that. Fair enough. Less responsibility for me. I'll still help if needed. Reasonable. Now, I have another offer. Go on. I'm willing to give you what you'd call a system. Oh boy. Relax. No cringe gamer nonsense. Think of it as a status screen and quest tab. Balanced rewards. No inventory. Magic will handle that. More functions will unlock as your skills grow or when you complete major quests. Fair enough. But why offer it? Because the multiverse is young. And you, sooner or later, will pursue immortality, dimensional travel, all that. I'd like you to eventually form a group and take on a few jobs to help stabilize things. I guess I'd better accelerate my magic research. Take 1,000 years if you want. I'm patient. Since you're clearly accepting, I'll polish whatever backstory you choose. Mostly beneficial additions. Great. Make me a young Dunmare orphan from the Great War. Parents were mages and left me a basic education, mundane and magical. Don't wake my memories until I'm at least a teenager. When do I start? 5 years before Skyrim's main events. That workable? Perfect. One last question. Who are you supposed to be? The figure winked. Call me Robert. My consciousness faded. MC's POV. Hey you, you're finally awake. Oh, piss off. System initiated. Welcome, host. Right, better make sure I'm not about to get stabbed before I start poking at menus. I take in my surroundings. I'm sitting beside a dying campfire on the side of a cobbled road that winds down a mountain into a valley to the north. Dawn's creeping in. I'm alone, holding a bottle of cheap meat. Behind me is a small leather tent and a stuffed travel sack. My belongings, I assume. There's a puddle of clean water beside the fire, so I lean over and check my reflection. Bright red eyes stare back at me. Sharp features. Shoulder-length black hair. Light gray skin. Dunmare. Feels strange not being human anymore, but I'm sure I'll get used to it. I look about 185 centimeters tall. Pretty big for someone who's apparently still a teenager. Then again, with a long-lived race, who knows when adolescence even ends. Hopefully, I don't need to wait 30 years to be considered mature enough not to blow myself up with my own magic. Seeing nothing dangerous nearby, I finally focus on the system. My past life memories are a blur, mostly impressions and experience, so best get them sorted now. Start memory integration. Pain hits instantly. Ah, gods, okay, that hurts. My voice sounds rougher than it should for a 16-year-old. Guess all that ash does something to the genetics. The memories slot into place. I'm an orphan from the Imperial City. My parents fled Morrowind after the Red Year and served in the Legion for nearly 2 centuries. Father became a respected legate. Mother retired early to focus on family. They had me in 4E180. I grew up comfortably educated like a minor military noble, learned basic magic from my father. They died in 4E196, killed during an incident involving a Thalmor agent. The Empire covered it up. I left, disgusted, heading for Skyrim to study magic at the college and get away from the Imperial circus. Good enough for now. Time to find civilization instead of brooding. Status. Name, Raven House, Daggett. Age, 16. Race, Dunmare Sign Mage. Average adult score is 10. STR, 7 Dex. 9 Vit. 7 Mind, 15. Mag, 120. Oh boy, Bobby really did spice it up. Should have known. Well, guess I'll have to teach the fine citizens of Skyrim not to be racist to a god. Or at least the descendant of one. Yes, apparently I'm the grandson of Daddy Daggett himself. Better never stand anywhere near Azura's shrine. I scroll through my skills next. Skills. Mage skills. Destruction, novice. Flames. Alteration, novice. Oak flesh, minor telekinesis. Restoration, novice. Heal. Alchemy, novice. Enchanting, basic. Warrior skills. Sword fighting, basic. Traits. Fireblood, 50% fire resistance, plus 20% fire damage and control. Blood of Daggett, inherited longevity and the third eye. Third eye, perceive magicka around you. So I know enough magic to not get eaten by a wolf and enough swordsmanship to swing a blade properly. And being a Daggett actually comes with perks. Who knew madness bred good traits? I open the sack beside me. Magic notes. A few starter spells. About 150 septims. A beginner's alchemy kit. An iron saber in good condition. Clothes. Simple robe, travel boots. The map says I'm half a day's walk from Helgen. Quest added. Reach Helgen today. Reward. An opportunity for free lodging. Balanced rewards, huh? Guess that's what he meant. Fine. After I pack this crap up. General POV. Hours later, Raven walks the road, absent-mindedly picking flowers. At least I don't have to eat them. Imagine having to eat a giant's toe. He shudders as he continues gathering alchemical ingredients. A scream pierces the air ahead. Damn it. Please don't be bandits. I'm not ready for that. He draws a breath and moves toward the sound. Moments later, he spots a young Nord girl sprinting down the road, a starving wolf at her heels. She sees the robed Dunmare and veers toward him in desperation. Raven draws his saber. Run to me. When you get close, jump to the side. The child obeys instantly, leaping away just as Raven unleashes a blast of flame. The wolf isn't so lucky. It lets out a whimper and collapses in a charred heap. Both stand panting for a few seconds. Well, Raven mutters, I sure as hell won't be getting a pelt out of that. The girl, now oddly calm, nor child, after all, give him a bright smile. Thank you for saving me, mister. No problem, he says. You're from Helgen, right? She nods. Then come with me. I'm headed that way. Maida owns the tavern. They'll give you a drink. Then we'd better hurry. Raven grins. A drink sounds fantastic right now. An hour later, they walk into the tavern. The girl throws herself into her father's arms, babbling about her escape. Halfway through, the innkeeper looks past her and approaches Raven. "Welcome, traveler, and thank you for protecting my daughter. Wolves are getting bolder every day." He shakes his head. "Name's Violet. You need a room?" "Yes. One night, and a hot meal and bath, if possible." Violet smiles warmly and gestures toward a free table. "Make yourself at home. You stay free anytime." "My thanks, Sarah. I'll take that bath now." Dinner's in half an hour. Raven slips into the washroom and sinks into the warm water with a long, relieved sigh. So combat hides notifications. Good to know. Quest completed. Protect the innkeeper's daughter. Reward: free lodging. Hidden quest completed. Defeat the wolf without the child being harmed. Reward: minor warrior's blessing. Hidden quest 2. Nice. After a long soak, Raven eats and blends into the tavern chatter, fishing for information. Most of it is the usual. Complaints about the Thalmor abusing their authority. Someone mutters something anti-elf, but shuts up quickly after hearing about Raven's heroics. Who knew? Don't act like a S-wit, and people won't treat you like one. Later, as he lies in his room, his thoughts drift. First day in Tamriel, and I saved a kid, fought a wolf, and, greatest achievement of all, earned the respect of Nords while being a Dunmare. 5 years until the world goes to hell, assuming the timeline still holds. I need to train like a lunatic if I don't want to end up dragon food. Suddenly, Dagatha's little gift doesn't seem so bad. With that comforting thought, Raven drifts into sleep.
Hey everyone, welcome to FanFic Canon. Thanks for hitting play. I'm thrilled to bring this fan-made story to life for you. If you enjoy the ride and want more narrated fanfics, smash, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss an episode. And if you want audiobook of a novel of your choice, join my Patreon. Request any title that's freely available online, and I'll produce a full narration just for you. Now, let's dive into today's adventure.
Raven got up early the next morning and quickly busied himself with crushing the flowers he collected during his little hike using his alchemy kit, a rather simple mortar and pestle, in hopes of selling the low-level salves. They were not anything special, but they would stop infections and heal cuts, something a bunch of farmers and the like were happy to pay for. This is surprisingly therapeutic, Raven thought with a hum as he made a nice red paste with his pestle. "Morning, Mr. Elf." The little girl from yesterday, whose name he learned to be Sigrun, greeted him loudly. She looked to be completely recovered from the previous day's events, bringing an easy smile to Raven's face. "Hey there, kid. Up early, I see," he greets her. "Well, you said you would be leaving early, so I had to say bye," she immediately states, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "How polite. Well, since you are here, how about you show me around? I need to visit the store anyway." He packs his kit and slowly gets up while the girl almost attempts to drag him with her with how excited she was. After being enthusiastically shown all around Helgen, Raven managed to sell the salves he made for 12 septims and bought enough supplies to last him the trip to Whiterun. "It will take me about 2 days to reach Riverwood and another to reach the city. The real Skyrim is far larger than what the game had shown, which is honestly a good thing, though the traveling will be annoying." He mumbles to himself as he looks over a rudimentary map before he simply shrugs. "Oh well, guess it's time to break all those inane laws about mages teleporting around." "You seem to be one of the mage types, elf?" the shopkeeper asks, almost politely by Nord standards. He and Raven were having light conversation as the elf looked over the man's stock. "Yes, I dare call myself a practitioner of the arcane arts." Raven responds with a bit of dramatic flair. "Ah, good to hear." The man chuckles at the elf's theatricality. "Anyway, I got an interesting little ring some time back from my supplier said. It helps mages cast more spells or something." "Let me take a look." Raven immediately turned serious. Magical items were quite literally the difference between life and death, and the old man turned young elf did not wish to die, just yet if he could help it. The shopkeeper takes out a simple silver ring with very tiny blue veins along the surface. And while Raven was not good enough to enchant items himself, he was taught how to identify them relatively quickly, and, much to his satisfaction, this appeared to be a ring of magicka. A lesser one, true, but enough to fuel the flame spell for a couple more seconds at the very least. How much? He asked the shopkeeper with a serious look. Well, considering that you aren't an ass like your Western cousins, I'd be willing to part with it for 100 septims, the man smirks. Huh, that is a surprisingly fair price. Who would have guessed? Raven mumbles before noting at the man. Sure, I'll take it. Not even going to barter, eh? The Nord raises an eyebrow. Only to get waved off by Raven. The price is fair, so there is no need. The man smiles, seeming pleasantly surprised. Raven quickly puts the ring on and gives him the money. Immediately, he feels his magicka rise by about 15, which is a pretty decent increase. Thank you for this. Might save my life. Sure thing. Safe travels, the man nods. Raven waves to him as he leaves back to the tavern. Soon after saying his goodbyes, he leaves through the gate and starts walking down the road towards Riverwood. The first day of travel goes relatively peacefully. The only interruption was another starved wolf, going from well done to congratulations in record speed. He spent his resting time learning the next level of his pyromantic spells, specifically the firebolt, which is far more complex than simply channeling magicka through your hand and setting it on fire. It required the magicka to be condensed and sufficiently heavy for a lack of a better word to be launched in a straight line. Surprisingly, as one advances through the ranks, all spells seem to retain their relevance, with flames becoming thicker, firebolts curving, and fireballs exploding far more violently. At least that is what the notes he took from his father's journal say. I always did think that the spell system was far too rigid in the game. Raven nodded to himself, satisfied with the change. The morning of the second day, he finds himself walking next to a small forest between the road and the nearby river. The one leading into the big-ass lake north of Falkreath, if I remember right. He scratches his chin in thought as he walks and leisurely enjoys the fresh air. He stilled completely, and then quickly hid as he heard two men speaking in a brash tone just beyond the trees. What are we going to do to that Breton bitch? One asks. She froze Thorald's foot off. What do you mean, what are we going to do? The other answers, she might be a bit young, but we can have some fun before we offer kikik. I don't know, man, seems kind of wrong to me. The first shifts uncomfortably. His friend spits on the ground. Well, then you shouldn't have offed that dickhead in Whiterun, and you wouldn't be here. Fuck you, man, I didn't run away, so I get my rocks off. And more for me then, you little pussy. The slightly more honorable bandit huffs and walks off. Raven, hearing this, gets properly pissed off, as any self-respecting man should in this situation, and starts sneaking behind the little shit that suggested something so vile. Thankfully, he is dressed very light and had the good sense to leave his travel supplies behind on the road. The bandit doesn't take notice until it is far too late and the blade of a saber is stabbed through his neck. He gurgles and tries to struggle, but a magic-empowered gray hand that seems covered in what covers his mouth and stops him from alerting his buddies. I just killed a man, but honestly, if I had to choose who my first kill would be, it is definitely this kind of shit stain. Leaving the body for later looting, as he isn't a damn S-wit, he continues stalking toward the tents he noticed a bit further in the forest. The other bandit he overheard appears to be thinking hard about his life choices, but unfortunately for him, looking at the ground absent-mindedly is of no help for seeing a dark elf swinging for his neck. Overestimating the quality of his saber and the strength given by Oakflesh Raven is surprised when, while mortally wounding the bandit, it is still not enough for an insta-kill. The man lets out a pitiful wail, alerting the only remaining bandit, who comes out of the camp holding a dark-haired, amber-eyed Breton teen with a knife to her throat. She looks familiar. Raven thinks absent-mindedly. The bandit glares at Raven and yells, "You fucking ELF SHIT. Drop the sword right now, or the girl gets it." Thinking quickly and remembering he didn't use any visible magic, Raven sighs and drops the saber on the ground, spreading his hands to his sides as a sign of surrender. The bandit, thinking his plan worked, tosses the girl to the side and starts running towards him, ready to end him with his knife. Unfortunately for him, in his excitement, he seems to have forgotten that the girl he just tossed is a mage, quickly getting his entire back covered in frostbite for his trouble. Seeing this opportunity, Raven shoots the most powerful wave of fire he can, and the bandit is turned into a charred spot on the ground. Picking up his saber, he approaches the girl slowly. She eyes him suspiciously, but doesn't react. He raises his hand in a show of assurance and asks, "Are there any more of these Enwas around?" The girl is silent and simply shakes her head. Sigh. Okay, good. And he promptly turns and starts retching, realizing he just burned a man alive. About a minute later, he gets himself together and looks at the girl whose face shows an expression of curiosity, almost as if confused by his reaction. Fucking kids shouldn't consider this normal. "What are you doing in the forest anyway?" he asks her. She looks at him for a minute and says, "I ran away from my people and ran into these fools. If they didn't surround me, I could have taken them." "Ah yes, because shooting Nords with frost magic is a great damn idea." Raven snarks at the young woman. She looks offended and huffs. "Well, do excuse my inability, but not all of us can simply burn everything without tiring out immediately." "Fair, fair. Anyway, why did you run off?" he asks as he takes a seat to rest up a bit. "My mother wanted to sacrifice me to become a Hagraven," she says in a deadpan voice. "Well, fuck. She seems to be a mage and has nowhere to go. Might as well. While I am traveling towards Winterhold to join the College of Mages there. It's pretty far away, but it should be safe from any persecution you might face if anyone finds out your origins." She thinks about it for a bit and nods, but looks at me with suspicion. "While 'tis the best option I have, I won't let myself be turned into one of your fetchers, elf. I will be watching you." He looks at her gobsmacked, starts laughing, and then asks, almost unsure, "I am fairly certain you aren't Argonian?" Shaking his head, he heads back toward the first bandit he offed. A silence follows for a good minute before Raven shrugs and says, "Well, I'm looting the shit out of this place and will leave for Riverwood soon. You can stay here and be suspicious, or we can get moving." She narrows her eyes, but quickly realizing her savior was right, she soon starts packing things up as well. The bandits are as expected poor as shit. All he manages to dig up are 50-ish septims, 2 daggers, and a sword, all iron. One of the bandits has a silver ring, so he takes that as well. "What is your name anyway?" "Mine is Raven." The young woman stops her scrounging and packing for a second before continuing and saying more again. "Fucking knew I recognized her from somewhere." Raven cheers inwardly. "Though there are subtle differences from what I remember, that might just be because she is younger." "Well, Morrigan, we have quite some daylight left, so we might as well start walking," he says with false cheer. "Yes, I wouldn't want to smell these fools for a second longer." "We'll make sure to wash your tent then." "Ugh. Can we swap?" she asks, almost pleading. "Nope," he says, popping the pea. And now followed by the grumbling, which he sets off towards Riverwood. They arrived at Riverwood late in the afternoon. The village looked like it held about 200 residents and was far more spread out than one would expect at the time period. There were even some farms across the river, as well as a palisade surrounding the entire place. "Guess they aren't idiots at least," Raven mused as they approached the gate. The guards at the gate wore the Whiterun emblem on their scaled armor and seemed sufficiently alert for their position. "Ho there, travelers. What brings you to Riverwood?" greets one of the guards. "Just passing through and heading to Whiterun, Sarah. We're looking to stay the night and will not cause any trouble," Raven answers while giving a pointed look at his companion, who huffs and looks to the side. The entire walk on the way here, she kept pestering him about every little thing so much, so that even with his century of experience, he almost threw a tantrum. The guardsman nods along, looking him over just in case, but finding no reason to be suspicious. "Should be no problem. You aren't merchants, so there's no toll. Just keep your nose clear and we'll be good." Of course, he nods and heads inside. The inner village looks surprisingly clean, and children are running around the place, causing all manner of havoc. Shame what the war will do to this entire place. I may be able to kill the shit out of Ulfric before he starts his whole request, but he would just be replaced by someone who doesn't even pretend to have principles. And I'm under no illusion I can stop a bunch of belligerent Nord from smashing skulls. The urging of his new, which companion draws his attention back to the present. They continue inside and find a general store. Raven manages to sell off his loot for some 50 septims and buys a well-made shirt of padded armor for his chest. Being stabbed is rather cringe, so he preferred avoiding such a fate. His companion bought a simple but still quality dark gray robe, so she doesn't stand out too much, the price of which irritates him to no end, but at that point, He had listened to her pestering the entire way to the village and had no more patience, so he relented and let her waste the money. He also easily noticed a golden claw in the corner of the shop, but decided not to open that can of worms right now. While he might be able to slowly and methodically clear the nearby barrow, it is far too risky, and he cannot be sure it is just as dangerous as in the game, and not far more. There could be a damn dragon priest inside, and he isn't Nerevar, who can just shim his way out of death. After they were done with their impromptu shopping trip, they entered the Sleeping Giant Inn, immediately being placed under the suspicious glances and outright glares of the patrons, while the owner had her own calculative look on her face. Of course, Delphine would have at least an idea about me. My father was a fucking Terminator at the Battle of the Red Ring. Raven grouses internally. He did not want to get involved with her while so weak. He ignored her gaze and sat down across from his companion. So how are you liking civilization so far? Not missing your bone-covered cave dweller friends? She huffs. Why would I miss those fools? And besides, these ones aren't any better. Raven shrugs her response off, as the childish complaining that it was, well, at least they don't sleep in caves covered with barely functioning clothing, and more importantly, don't serve a bunch of cannibalistic witches. Morgan huffs once more, but then relents. Yes, the lack of caves is indeed a good change. They're interrupted by the bartender, or whatever you would call one in this time period. Ogner, if he remembers correctly, they order their food, a good stew, and something to drink while also reserving a 2-bedroom. They continue discussing the difference between the Nords and Forsworn for some time, until they're unceremoniously joined by a somewhat lanky orc. Evening, you two. Can I have a seat? He asks with a youthful yet gruff voice. Sure. The elf answers before his companion can give her expectedly scathing answer. Thanks. He takes a seat next to him and asks, You two heading out to Whiterun, I hear. It appears that word spreads fast. Yes, we are headed to Whiterun and beyond. Raven answers easily. What's it to you? Well, I'm also going that way, and thought you might use some company. I may not look it, but I'm a beast with a spear. Oh, and name's Durik, by the way, Durik Grobar. He offers his hand, which the elf grasps firmly. Well, as firm as he can with his stick-like hands. Raven, he introduces himself. And the annoyed one is Morgan. I wouldn't mind the company, honestly. There are far too many bandits in this land, or well, in any land after the war. True, you can't ever be too safe. So, I'm guessing you two are going to winter hold after Windhelm. You seem the type. Raven's eye twitches. Do only mages wear robes these days? We could be priests, damn it. That we are, Raven admits after a moment. We are both aspirants in the arcane arts, and I would at least want to spend some time in Whiterun learning the blade from someone. Sometimes just lopping someone's head off is far easier than burning them. Very true, my new friend. The orc nods. No need to complicate it. And what about you, Durik? Raven asks. Durik nearly jumps in excitement. I am traveling Skyrim to become a true warrior. I am but a whelp now, but one day I will be the greatest of them all. Would you shut the bloody hell up, orc? One of the patrons yells, and Durik sits back down with a dusting of red on his cheeks. You sure don't aim low, huh? Raven smirks at the young man. Ah yes, the greatest dead warrior indeed. Morgan snarks, but surprisingly the orc is not offended and merely smiles. And that is the best part. No one believes me, so it will be so much better when I show them my might. He flexes his hand and doesn't react when there is barely any movement upon it. They continue chatting into the night and later split up and go to sleep. The morning is a bit rainy, but thankfully their clothes are made for travel, with Durik wearing a thick leather cloak over his iron chest plate, while the robes of the mages are equipped with a hood. Their walk passes without incident, and soon they are greeted by the tall walls of Whiterun. Much like Riverwood, the city itself is far larger than the game had shown. The districts are about 10 times as large and populous, at least from what Raven can guess, and the walls themselves are surrounded by a great sprawl of buildings, likely making up their own district. They quickly find some cheap lodgings on the outskirts and get ready to explore the city. The morning is far brighter than the last one, so they get up early. The gate guard lets them in with no fuss. This is the most visited city in Skyrim after Solitude, after all. They quickly visit the local shops, selling some salves and ingredients they picked up on the way, and buying some bracers for Raven and a simple staff for Morgan that helps channel weaker spells. This sets them back some money, and they find that they still need more for their trip. It would after all not be useful for anyone if they reached Winterhold lacking their limbs. They quickly find a notice board near the tavern sitting in the center of the Wind District. Most of the things are simple menial labor and the like, but there is one bandit hunting quest. The nearby mountainside cave has been taken over by some bloke calling himself Iron Hand, and they are terrorizing the local farms and have even robbed a trader some days back. The reward is pretty large, a bit less than 200 each, and should let them get some decent upgrades. But the number of the bandits is said to be a dozen. While we could try and sneak up on some of them, thin the herd, so to say. Raven thinks aloud. Or we could just smash them so fast their numbers just don't matter, answered the orc with a toothy grin. Or, Morrigan interjects with a scowl, we could just take our time, do easier things, wait a couple of days, and earn our money that way. No need to risk ourselves overdoing the guard's work for them. Nah, we still need to gain some experience while traveling, and this is a good opportunity for it. You could just stay behind the two of us anyway, and use that weird root magic you showed me yesterday to fuck with the bandits. Me and Durek will do most of the fighting. Raven assures her. Well, while she may look like her and have the same name, I have to remember that this is still just a teenage girl who ran from a bunch of Forsworn. And while she might be jaded, that doesn't make her brave besides. Quest initiated. Clear out the Iron Hand bandits. Reward. Plus 5 mag. Subquest initiated. Protect your companions from permanent harm. Reward. An insight into your restoration magic. These are pretty good rewards on their own. My restoration has been progressing somewhat slowly, but that is mostly just the heal spell being ridiculously magica intensive. A simple cut takes a third of my tank, and it takes me about a good 20 minutes to recharge fully. Besides, getting to Winterhold as soon as possible will help us in the long run. Will help the two of us. I don't know where you plan to go, Durek. Raven continues convincing his first companion while giving the orc a side glance. Well, you both seem like decent enough people, so I don't mind heading north with you. Might even get into some troll fights, HH. Is the expected enthusiastic answer. Sigh, orcs. Morrigan TSKS audibly, but eventually agrees fine, but if I get as much of a scratch from there, you won't hear the end of it. I believe you. Raven shivers remembering their walk to Riverwood. He quickly gets back on topic. Well, then let's go see the steward and head off toward the bandits. They won't off themselves. Durek chuckles, while Morrigan rolls her eyes as they head towards the Cloud District. The talk with the steward went relatively quickly. Proventus asked them if they were sure we could complete the bounty and gave them all the details he had on the bandits. They already mostly knew them from the notice board and general gossip, so the group quickly came up with a very basic plan. Bandits generally did their work during nighttime, so attacking during the day was the best choice available. Most of them would still be rested as a rotation was no doubt in place, but any tired bandit was a plus. Before heading out, Raven visited the famously annoying court wizard of Whitron, Farengar's secret fire, but much to his great surprise the court mage greeted him with a polite smile and simply inquired, "How can I help you, young mage?" Quickly hiding his surprise, Raven explained, "I am looking for some basic books and spells on conjuration, and also any lesser enchanted items you may have for when we return." Farengar nodded approvingly. "Ah, of course the bandits. I heard they were getting very annoying recently." "So it's the lot of them." Raven nodded along. "In any case, do you have any spell recommendations for an aspiring mage such as myself?" After a cursory look, Farengar hummed and asked, "Well, you seem to be actively using a sidearm, so maybe a bound weapon? They need no maintenance, so they're always a good choice." Intrigued by the idea, Raven asked, "How does a bound weapon work in application? I can pay if that information is something valuable to you, of course." Farengar chuckled before waving him off. "No need. It is a rather basic spell when starting out. Essentially, you learn to shape magicka into a weapon, then make it take your preferred shape, and as the potency of your magicka grows, so does the potency of your weapon. Of course, the spell can be altered at later stages for added effects, and can even be used as a medium for magic." "Huh, that is actually far better than I originally expected." Raven muttered, "How much for that spell book, and any notes you might have on it?" "Well, my focus was never on conjuration or alteration for that matter, so I have just the basics, but you can have both for a mere 150 septims." Farengar offered, I don't mind helping an ambitious young mind, especially if they make my job easier by removing the surrounding ne'er-do-wells. As for enchanted items, I mostly do them by commission, so all I have lying around is a simple ring of restoration that was not up to the standards of the local healers. You can have that one for a mere 50-inch. This will wipe out all of my savings, but that spell seems pretty good. The ring is a no-go, though a minor boost won't change much. Raven took all of 3 seconds to ponder before giving his answer. I'll take the books for now. But of course, good luck. Farengar sent him off with his new spell book. Thank you, he said and walked back to his group. Durik seemed to be almost giddy with anticipation, while Morgan seemed more nervous than before. You both ready? Raven asked and received 2 nods. He clapped eagerly and started walking out of Dragon Reach. Well, off we go then. The entire way to their destination, Raven had his nose stuck in his new book. He knew there was no chance for him to actually manage the spell so quickly, but any progress was good progress. He absent-mindedly checked out his system as he walked. STR 7, Dex 9, Vit 7.2, Mind 15, Mag 122. How all this walking does seem to be pretty healthy for me, and the magic practice is paying dividends. Let's see the skills then. Destruction Novice 60%, Flames Firebolt, Alteration Novice 35%, Oak Flesh Minor Telekinesis, Restoration Novice 40%, Heal Self, Heal Other, Conjuration Basic 20%, Alchemy Novice 70%, Enchantment Basic 90%, Sword Fighting Novice 0%. Shanking Bandits is actually pretty good for learning how to swing a sword. Who could have guessed? He thought sarcastically, although to be fair, merely reaching the novice level means I won't remove my own hand mid-battle, and not much beyond that. As they were walking, he started explaining restoration to Morgan, who only knew some cryomancy and alteration. He preferred if she knew at least the basics, just in case he emptied his reserve and someone was wounded. The most basic restoration spell won't regenerate anyone, but it will stop them from bleeding out. They reached the Iron Hand camp sometime later. It appeared to be a cave that led to something of a balcony up top, where he guessed some lookouts should be. Surprisingly, or not considering these were a bunch of untrained ruffians with maybe one experienced fighter, there wasn't a single one up there. At the entrance, 2 bandits were sitting and drinking mead without a care in the world and completely unaware of their surroundings. The 3 adventurers made a quick plan and started sneaking toward them. Unfortunately, Durik accidentally banged a spear on a nearby pot and startled the guards, who reached for their weapons as fast as they could while stumbling over their seats. Raven, long since suspecting that a heavily armored orc wasn't the sneaky type, was already launching a firebolt at one of the bandits. The impact caused a small explosion to happen on the man's face, making it resemble a crushed watermelon before the charred bits spread all over the place. The second guard, now scared shitless, was too slow to react to the armored orc ramming a spear into his throat with surprising strength. Phew, thank fuck there weren't more of them here, or that could have gone badly. Raven breathed out in relief. We killed them easily, didn't we, though? Asked a confused orc, now cleaning his weapon with his sleeve. Smiling wryly, Raven shrugged. Well, yes, but imagine if they called the entire camp. We would have been completely and utterly fucked. The orc merely shrugged back and started walking to the entrance. The inside of the cave was covered in mismatched loot of low value, furniture, dishes, and the like. I'm guessing the actually valuable stuff is upstairs. Raven remarked, well, might as well keep going, never know when they might notice us. Not long after, they found another group, 5 this time, sitting around a table, and were immediately noticed. Following their previous plans, Raven immediately started tossing firebolts while Durik charged. Morgan was using her alteration to trip the bandits by way of summoning roots near their feet. The first bandit fell much like his predecessor with a bolt of fire to the face. 2 of the bandits tried to gang up on the orc with their axes, but his armor and reach advantage stopped him from getting overwhelmed, stabbing one of them in the leg. He managed to keep both busy. Among the bandits, one seemed to be armored fully in iron, wielding a sword and shield. He charged at the elf that just ended his friend, who immediately sent a bolt his way. The bandit's shield saved his life, turning the potentially lethal injury into a mere stagger. Realizing he wasn't going to achieve anything by being cautious, the large man rushed to the now tired-looking mage with furious glee in his eyes. Fuck, I didn't think firebolts would be this intensive. Only 4 of them, and I'm almost out, Raven groused internally as he unsheathed his sidearm. He tried to hold the bandit off with his saber, but the man was far larger and heavier than him, and simply shield slammed him into the ground. Raven was gasping for breath when he saw his enemy go for the kill, and then get his face covered in a wave of frost. Damn, that was close. He quickly got up, and with all his remaining magicka, sent a wave of flame to the man that was trying to sneak up on the distracted witch. I might slowly be becoming a pyromaniac, the Dunmare thought absent-mindedly as he looked at the burning man. During this brief bout of danger, Durik finished both his enemies, surprising his companions with his skill. The orc noticed their surprise and smirked triumphantly. Told you I was a beast. Raven patted his shoulder like one might do to a child before sitting down nearby. Sure, you're a buddy now. I need to sit down. Throwing around this much magic is tiring. They sat around for some 10 minutes and decided to head forward. Thankfully, the reports on the notice board were wrong, as there was only one bandit remaining. Sitting on the balcony at the top of the cave, he was wearing steel armor, and next to him was a steel war hammer, and most importantly, a large ornate chest. Sharing a couple of glances between each other, the trio started walking behind him. But he simply sighed, stood up, and looked at them with disdain and boredom in his eyes. Now, I have to round up some new fools to serve me. How will you repay me for that? The only answer he got in return was a snort and a sudden wave of fire blazing in his direction. Surprisingly, he merely charged through, taking almost no visible damage. But on the other side, what awaited him was a spear aiming for him. He mentally scoffed, thinking that there was no way they thought he would fall for that. When suddenly he tripped, the last thing he saw before he got impaled was brown roots holding his legs. Well, that was anticlimactic. Good thing there are 3 of us. He seemed strong, Raven thought in relief. He then spoke in a tired voice. All right, let's check what he was hoarding and get the hell out of here. I need a bed and some mead after this. His companions agreed and started looking around the place. Inside the chest, they found some septims and gems, as well as some jewelry. The bandit leader's gauntlets seemed to have an enchantment that helped with great weapons, so Durik took that, and also his armor while he was at it. It might be too large for him, but it can be fitted back in the city. They spent about an hour resting and looting the place, finding some lesser healing potions and also a lot of mushrooms, which were pretty good for making said potions, so Raven eagerly grabbed them. Morrigan finally deigned to mention that she was also a trained alchemist. Not surprising due to her origins. What was surprising was the fact that she claimed she was even better than the elf, which in his own words was not a great achievement. Soon they were walking back towards the city, tired and battered, yes, but also richer in both wealth and experience. As the party was tiredly trudging back toward Whiterun, Raven checked his notifications. Multiple quests completed. Mag. 122 equals 127. Restoration Novice, 40% equals 70%. He suddenly felt a slight bit more heavy in a metaphysical sense, and his restoration spells seemed like they were simpler than before, so this is how it works, he thought as they reached the gate. You got those shits, The gate guard asks with zero preamble. They shattered in front of my spear, just as Malakath intended, says a very excited orc. His 2 companions, though, seemed much less enthusiastic after hours of walking and fighting. I don't know about Malakath, but I sure do appreciate you taking care of them. Go on, and the Jarl will likely want to speak with you. The guard points his thumb behind him. They enter the city and start cursing at the fact that they have to climb again. Well, at least the mages do. Durik seems so happy with his victory that he doesn't even notice the trip until they are already at the doors of the palace. They walk up to the throne where the Jarl seems to be shouting at a sleazy, dark-skinned man who is cowering like a dog. And get the fuck out of my palace, Nazim. I swear to the gods the next time you run your damn mouth ill. Calm down, my Jarl. I think you got the message. The steward, a Vinixai if Raven's memory served, tries to defuse the situation with a placating voice. Fine, get out now. The Jarl huffs and sits back down. Nazim scampers off with surprising speed, not even noticing the 3 new arrivals who then proceed to stand before the Jarl. The man, the myth, the legend Jarl Balin himself, Raven thinks to himself with an internal chuckle. He gives the man a light bow and speaks, "Greetings, Jarl. We would like to report that the Iron Hand bandits have been dealt with, although whoever informed you of the numbers was wrong, since there were just over half of them present on site." Balgruuf nods, unsurprised. This was to be expected. There's another group of them that were caught by the sleazebags guards after you left. So I guess he came here to brag, and went a bit too far, Raven surmises easily. No matter, the Jarl waves it off. The most important part is that the leader, Hadver, was slain, and from your Orcish friend's new gauntlets, I can see that is the case. He nods toward Durek. "Oh, so these are some renown then?" Raven asks with a raised eyebrow. Balgruuf looks to be reminiscing before nodding. "Yes, they belong to the small Iron Hand clan of Whiterun, but the man you took them off was the last member and turned to banditry, so you can keep them without any worries." "My thanks, Chief," says Durek, smiling, thinking about all the things he can slay now. Balgruuf rewards the orc with a stoic nod before once more speaking to Raven, whom he understood was the unspoken leader of the group. "As for your reward, you will still be given the full amount. As I said, the leader was the most important. Also, I overheard you were heading towards Windhelm sometime soon. I have another request to make of you." They all shared a glance, and after some shrugs, Raven turned back to Balgruuf. "As long as we are capable of doing it, I don't see an issue with it." The Jarl nods towards a Vinixai, who gives them a letter. Afterwards, he continues, "I need this letter delivered to Jarl Ulfric Stormcloak. Within a week at the latest, there will be a bonus added to your reward now, since I don't think you will be coming back very soon." Raven seems surprised by this and asks, "Why would you trust us so quickly? We are newcomers and outlanders to you." The Jarl chuckles. "It is not that important of a letter, and you have already shown your honor by slaying the bandits. Besides, if you cheat me, you will not be welcome to Whiterun again. And I don't think you're stupid." He finishes a bit more darkly. "Fair enough. We should reach Windhelm in 4 days if there are not too many complications." Raven accepts easily enough. After the conversation with the Jarl, the trio excused themselves. Morgan went out to get them a place at the inn. Durek went to get his new armor fitted and to sell off the bandits' weapons and armor he carried back, while Raven once more paid a visit to Farengar. "You are back. I see that they were not enough to injure you." The court mage greets him with a jovial smile, the middle-aged man seemingly happy that a talented mage was not snuffed out before his time. Raven waves his hand in a SOSO motion. "One of them did rattle me a bit, but we came out on top. I still didn't learn the previous spell I got from you, but since we will be heading out for quite some time, I need some books on wards, enchanting, and alchemy if you have them." "I do, just a lesser ward and some recipe books, though the enchantment manuals are very pricey," he says to the elf, basically telling him that he cannot afford it. Raven shrugs, already satisfied with his gains. "Sure, I'll take the first 2 then, and any notes on the wards if you have them." Of course, the older mage starts rummaging through a chest in the corner of the room, and after sneezing from all the dust inside, he comes back. "Here you go, that will be 200 septims." Raven pays him and goes to find his companions. As they are eating in the tavern late in the evening, they strike up a conversation. "So Morgan, what are your plans when we get to the college?" Raven asks while chewing on a sweet roll. It was not as good as the confectionaries he was used to, but it would do in a pinch. "I plan to get so powerful no one will bother me, of course. And rich too. Say what you will about living freely in the wilds, but after tasting the luxuries here, I will need all the money I can get." She smiles with greed in her eyes. "What have I created?" Raven thinks with a slight building horror. He turns to his Orcish friend. "What about you, Durek? What are your long-term goals besides beating the shit out of anyone and everyone?" he asked with a smile. The orc's simple outlook was definitively starting to grow on him. "Well, then I will beat the shit out of not mere everyone, but everything. Just imagine what fun it will be to crush those pesky, totally not goblin farmer and their master's toys, HH. A small, evil part of Raven told him, "Well, at least I will have someone to take the hits for me then," but he was mostly entertained by the orc's enthusiasm. "What are your plans, Raven? All you ever mentioned was going to the college and nothing beyond that." Morgan asks him, her eyebrows raised in curiosity. He shrugs in response. "Well, my plans are pretty similar to yours in essence. Get powerful enough so that people prefer to leave me alone instead of trying to kill me for my ancestry, and also so I can explore the world without much issue. Your ancestry? Durik asks, confused. I am pretty sure that the Nords don't dislike you that much. Morgan merely hums along, waiting for the real explanation. Raven scowls lightly before writing himself. Let us just say that my house is not well liked. Even after all these years, the House of Daggeth is still reviled for the deeds of my ancestor. Durik merely looks confused while there's a hint of recognition in Morgan's eyes. I can see how being related to that madman might make people bay for your blood. Oh yes, dear old grandfather did get really high on that Lorcan juice, didn't he? Raven smiles wryly. Now she looks surprised. He actually had kids? Even the hags knew he had a massive thing for your Saint Nerevar. Raven actually laughs at this one. Oh yes, he did. His moon and star, I do believe he called him. But as any megalomaniac, he wanted to leave a legacy just in case. Which is funny because my father went on to become one of the best legionary legates in the war. The only reason he was never made general was his house. He must be rolling in the Red Mountain as we speak. They all hear a surprised gasp behind them, but it was quickly silenced, almost as if on instinct. Raven turns around and finds a dark elf woman standing behind a corner, listening in on them. He simply signals her to come forward. More of a command than a request is shown by the fire roiling in one of his hands. All the other patrons quickly move away, just in case, while the tavern owner looks super pissed, but keeps silent for now. The elven woman approaches slowly, while Raven has a slight look of recognition in his eyes. Isn't she that mercenary you can hire at the Hunter's Inn or something? When she's close enough, he asks in a sharp tone, So are we going to have a problem with what you just heard? She remains silent for a bit, then simply shakes her head. That war has long been over, and besides, no one has requested your head. Yet. A sadistic smile now on her face. He stares at her before slowly dispelling the flames while thinking, I cannot kill her now. She didn't attack me, and I'll be drawing mad suspicion at myself if she gets disappeared. Best solution, knowing she's a mercenary, is to hire her. So you seem to have no issue with me possibly being the Sharmat reborn or something equally ridiculous. Why did you listen in on us anyway? Well, I heard that you were going to be traveling towards Windhelm, and I wanted to visit my family there, she shyly explains. Raven groans in outrage. Why by all the gods is everyone here? Such a fucking gossip? He asks, completely exasperated. She laughs at this. Information is a pretty profitable business, and besides, people get bored. She adds with a shrug. So, I'm guessing you want to head out with us? He asks, already tired from the entire event. Yes, and don't worry. No cultists of Azura will learn of this from me. Consider it a bit compensation for barging in. She smiles and walks off, not before hearing Raven yell out, Be at the gate the morning of the next day. Both of his companions look at him as if waiting for an explanation, mostly Durik, but Morgan is also fishing for details. Fuck it, give me a drink, and I will give you the full history lesson. He sighs for the nth time today and starts weaving the story of false gods, reincarnations, Chim, and a dude with 3 eyes wearing a pot on his head with no other clothes. Raven's POV. After a long bit of story time, where Durik almost fell asleep 3 entire times we went to bed, the innkeeper yelled my ears off about fire magic inside the establishment, but said that she wouldn't be charging extra due to our recent bandit slaying. Nords really are all about reputation. Once you prove yourself even a bit, suddenly you aren't the dark elf, but that guy who did that one thing or another. Considering that many of my memories of my previous lifetime have partly faded and that the young Raven has slowly replaced the old man, the feeling of being honestly respected for your work is very refreshing when compared to the nest of vipers that was the Imperial City. Morgan decided to go to the alchemy shop and get some work done there, while Durik and I went to the companions hoping we could get a fighting lesson or two. As we approach the overturned ship turned drinking hall, we hear a great bit of noise and shouting from the inside. While the smell of alcohol almost knocks me out on contact, the orc next to me merely sniffs and opens the door. As soon as we enter, everyone turns quiet. The companions turn to us, some in curiosity, some trying to be intimidating. But joke's on you, I am an old fart, no amount of glaring will make me flinch. Durik, on the other hand, speaks loudly. Where are all you looking at? Me and my friend came here to get some practice in. Any of you sober enough for it? Or should I get you all some milk? Seeing as the orc doesn't even give a shit about the atmosphere, most of them break into laughter. The bluntness of his request seems to fit the place perfectly. Fucking Nords, I swear to Daggeth. Soon we are approached by the infamous twins of companions and are led outside. Durik goes to spar with Farkas, while I get his brother, and while the both of us put up a valiant effort, we get our shit kicked in repeatedly for 4 entire hours. Although to be fair, it is not all bad. Flaws are pointed out, wasted movements corrected, and a beginning of a style is formed. My orc friend naturally seems not to mind this one bit. In fact, the madman seems to enjoy it. After our requested ass-whooping, we pay for everyone's drinks, as they didn't even ask us for a fee for the training, and sit for them for a bit sharing stories. We are questioned about our recent victory, and Durik starts boisterously retelling our fight. Most of the companions are Nords, so they don't react too positively when magic is mentioned, but it is balanced out by us being vastly outnumbered, so they do give me some grumbling respect in the end. When it comes to the slaying of the bandits' leader, I am pleasantly surprised when they all approve of the way he died. Apparently, he was quite the coward, even if a skilled one, and many people were robbed and killed by his dishonest ways, at least in the words of the companions. There seem to be a couple of elves in the group, but they don't seem to hold too high a position, which is honestly to be expected. The elven part of my mind seems to always focus on such thoughts, and in truth, it would have likely formed a large part of my personality if I didn't have an entire lifetime of experience to filter them out. After the retelling, Durik decides to stay and continue fighting with anyone who wants to challenge him, while I head out back to the tavern to find a quiet corner and study a bit. I decided to stop learning the bound weapon for the moment, as after seeing what my firebolts do to people, I need a ward as soon as I can get one. So, the goal for today is to learn how to make them, and make them quickly. It takes me a good 6 hours of continuous trying and failing until I remember that I have a goddamn bloodline power that is basically made from magic. Following my instincts, I activate my third eye, and am surprised by the vibrant colors that now surround me. Everything is covered in at least a thin layer of blue, but I see that some objects have a denser aura, and it seems that they are generally ones of more value. Is the value of an object that which makes it channel magic better, or the magic that makes it valuable? In any case, now I understand why the flame spell was simply ignored by the bandit boss. Focusing back on the ward and following the instructions now with an extra visual aid, I managed the spell relatively quickly. It is a very simple one, as it forms a layer of magicka in front of me, though it is very static and can block only a spell or two. Wanted to experiment a bit, I try and make the shield vibrate from the center outwards, but it quickly shatters. Maybe my magicka is not dense enough, or the spell formula is just too basic. Something to explore when we arrive at my final destination. I spend the rest of the day attempting to refine my fire magic, considering that I have a talent for it and a relatively good grasp on both spells already. I try making the firebolt spin and concentrate into a denser form, make the flames hotter and more focused, and all other sorts of combinations. By the time my companions return, my notifications look something like this. STR 7 equals 7.1. Dex 9 equals 9.4. Vit 7.2 equals 7.5. Mag 127 equals 130. Restoration Apprentice. Heal, self, heal, other, lesser ward. Destruction Apprentice. Searing Flames, Firebolt. Sword Fighting Novice. Yep, my flame spell seems like it has become more potent, but also more costly. I can use the downgraded version when I'm low anyway. My physical stats seem to be going up steadily. It's a good thing I get enough food every day, or I would be perpetually tired. I also seem to be slowly filling up and becoming less of a walking twig, but the change is minuscule for now. Anyways, my companions arrive from their adventures for the day, and Durik informs us that he has decided to join the companions, and as his first quest, he will take us to Winterhold. When I jokingly asked, does he want to get paid now, he looked almost offended and simply shook his head. Morgan sits next to me and whispers, I have followed that elf woman from yesterday for a bit. It really does seem like she's just packing up. I nod and whisper a thanks while she continues on. I have managed to get the restoration spells you show me down. Can I get the alchemy book now? Yes, I did promise I would give it to her. Apparently learning healing spells was not cool enough for her. or something equally childish. So I had to motivate her somehow, and the alchemy book seemed to interest her. Well, not like I need it at the moment. I'm focusing on far too many things. The three of us chat for a bit before turning in for the night. Tomorrow we are leaving Whiterun and heading to Windhelm. I just cannot wait. Snowy racism land, here I come. I think with false cheer before I fall asleep. We got up early, and after a hearty breakfast headed out toward the gates. There, as expected, awaited Janassa, the elf from the tavern 2 days back. We finished all preparations and headed out. The first day of walking went by quietly with me, once again, nose deep in my magic notes, scribbling whenever I was not afraid of tripping. Morgan gathering random herbs on the way, and Durek excitedly looking everywhere in hopes of impaling something. He did get somewhat lucky with a very starved wolf jumping us, but that mostly just annoyed him as he got excited for nothing. Janassa was quiet the entire way and simply spent her time enjoying the walk. The next day, we were passing next to the 2 towers connected by a thin bridge over the river we were following. I believe the place was called Valthium, and it is usually a bandit camp, but the skeleton brazenly standing next to the entrance proved otherwise. Quest initiated. Eliminate the Valthium Necromancer. Reward. Vit 0.5. Looks like your wish got granted, Durek. We have a necromancer on our hands. I quip, trying to get a count of the undead inside using my third eye. The necromancer offends the ancestors. We must paint his blood on the walls, says Janassa coldly. Must we really charge into every situation we come across? What if the necromancer is more powerful than us? Asked Morgan, already getting annoyed with having to fight again. If he was powerful, the skeleton would have sensed us ages ago. I swiftly explain, no, its presence is barely worth calling a proper animation, and I can only detect about a dozen of them, of about the same strength. Then what are we waiting for? Let's smash them. The orc is already putting on his new steel helmet. Fine. When he starts throwing lightning storms at us, don't blame me. Morgan huffs and also starts getting ready. The presence I detect on the other side tells me that the necromancer is not really that magically powerful, and most of his reserve is tied up keeping the skeletons going. Poor fool didn't even get the memo that you need rituals to have the undead be viable on your magicka. I relay these thoughts to my companions, who seem a bit less tense. While 2 of them do, the remaining one is just vibrating in place, ready to go in. They signal to me that they are ready, and I start casting my firebolt. Now spinning in my hand, it should be much faster and more precise than before. I launch it at the first skeleton, and it falls apart almost immediately. Sensing that the necromancer has been alerted by the connection being cut, I signal for us to rush in. Cutting through the skeleton seems really simple until ice shards start raining from above. Thankfully, I was able to detect them in time and started throwing out wards on top of us. They hold, if barely, and the necromancer already seems tired out if his magicka outline is anything to go by. My orc and Dunmare companions seem in their element, as Durek smashes the skeletons with his spear and Janassa dances around them, as much as the thin bridge allows her. The undead are quickly dispatched, and we race toward the tower before the rogue mage can escape. When we enter the room, he looks at us with a maddened face, pulling out a scroll. You will not stop my glorious rise. All of Tamriel dash. He is suddenly stopped with a massive, improvised javelin to the face. Durek walks to retrieve his spear and spits on the ground. You talk too much. Quest completed. I laugh my ass off internally as I feel just a bit more energetic than when started the day. We start scouring the place for loot, but don't find anything too good except for some money and a bit of food. No matter, anything is good at the moment. We decided to spend the night here, after clearing the remains and burning them. The next day, we reach a nearby inn without any issue and are served some surprisingly good food by a cook who refuses to show himself. This seems familiar for some reason, but I can't put my finger on it. We spend our time in the inn resting and chatting with the passing travelers who give us rumors of a troll blocking the way to Windhelm with a rather hefty bounty on it. When we hear this, I don't even need to turn around to realize who is shaking the entire table with excitement. When it comes to advancing my spell work, I finally got the bound weapon down. It is slightly weaker than a steel weapon for now, still being better than the iron one I started out with. The blade itself is mostly dark gray with red accents, and surprisingly, it looks like a normal saber, if a bit more jagged at the guard and tip, and not whatever spike hell the game's conjured weapons are from. We leave early once more, and thankfully there's no troll waiting for us on the road. Someone must have already taken care of it, and now I have to deal with a moping orc on the road. Joy. Morgan laughs at the poor orc, and we continue on, almost forgetting the presence of our other companion. Well, she seems to not mind. I shrug as I take out my book and continue rereading the ward section. Thinking about the troll situation, even if they are weak to fire, they are still massive tanks, and all it takes is one mistake for us to get mauled. So I will leave the troll slaying for when I could do it from a good distance with Magicka to spare. At the gates of Windhelm, we are greeted by disdainful looks of the guards. One of the shits even spits on the ground when he sees me. "And what do you want, elf?" he asks in a very loud and brash tone. I give him a very deadpan look and say in the most dead voice I can muster, "To enter the great city of kings, of course." My tone seems to go over the dumb fuck's head as he simply smiles and says, "Well, why didn't you say so? That'll be 2 septims per visitor. The city is already pretty crowded, so we have to take measures." Like hell I will believe that, but honestly, I'm not spending my day in front of a city while freezing my balls of, especially since I'm far more sensitive to it than a human. Fine, take the gold and let us in. I'm glad we understand each other. Watch yourself inside, elf. As we enter inside, I say, the smell of discrimination, racism, and hate. If it were warmer, it'd feel like home, pretending that I ever saw Morrowind. Janassa snorts and waves at us, heading towards the Grey Quarter. Thankfully, I already asked her how to navigate the place, so I don't have to chase her now. So what are we doing here anyway? It would be easier to just buy supplies on the way and not stop in this lovely place. Morgan's face visibly twitches as she attempts not to insult every Nord in earshot. While I did say that I wanted to explore the world, might as well start with one of the cultural centers of the region, no matter how much a shithole it is, and don't forget Jarl Balgriff's letter, I answer quietly. We'll be fine. The Nords won't dare be stupid when I whack them over the head a couple times, Durik says without giving the slightest shit about all the Nords looking at us, who then promptly turn around and continue with their day. Modern problems require ancient solutions, I guess. Right, and for starters, I think we should head into the Grey Quarter as well. It seems to be pretty big, and I don't want to be visible in this kind of place, I say, already planning on how to blend in. My companions agree, and we head towards the east of the city. Meanwhile, I check my progress. Vit, 7.5 equals 8. Mind, 15 equals 15.2. Mag, 130 equals 133. Conjuration Novice, Bound Saber, Steel. So using the third, I helped my mind get stronger. Useful to know. I think as we enter the miserable slum known as the Grey Quarter. As we walk the streets of the Grey Quarter, I cannot help but wince in disgust as I see the squalor that my people live in. The houses, if they can even be called that, are tiny and ramshackle. The children running around wear ragged clothes, and the workers milling about the place all seem malnourished. My blood boils at the sight, but my mind remains unmoved. My companions seem to share my feelings for their own reasons. Morgan says in a somewhat dead tone, "Even the caves seem better than this." I nod as we keep walking towards the local corner club. The inside of the new nicest corner club seems lively if a bit dusty. Dunmare workers, and even a couple of Argonians who I presume snuck inside, can be seen enjoying themselves drinking their problems away. We walk up to the bar and are greeted by an aged Dunmare man. "Greetings, Sarah. If you're looking for a taste of home, I've got just the thing for you and your companions." "Sure, give us a sujamma each. Haven't had one in ages," I say as we take our seats. "Coming right up," he says as he starts pouring. "So what brings you to the fabled Grey Quarter of Windhelm?" Honestly, I heard the rumors of how the place was treated by the local Jarl, and had to see it with my own eyes. Does he really not give shit about a good quarter of his city? I ask the last part quietly. His eyes dart around the place before turning to me. No, he really doesn't. We even have gangs of Nords extorting us constantly, and any complaints we give are at best ignored and at worst punished. And we can't even fight back because the gangs immediately go to the Jarl, and he cracks down on any of our attempts, he says in a defeated tone. Is there any way I could help out? I ask almost on instinct, immediately hearing a groan from Morrigan and an approving grunt for Durik. Well, at least it would be an interesting adventure, right? The old man part of me pipes in. He eyes us for some time before giving us our drinks and saying, "Meet me after the club closes. If you are willing to get your hands dirty, we could use all the help we can get," before he walks off, pretending that I annoyed him not to draw too much attention. I turn to Morgan to explain my need to do this, but she merely huffs and says, "Save it. You already offered them your help without even asking. What would even be the point of explaining? Just know that I'm not staying here for weeks, so you can finish your little gang purge." I sigh at this and say, "That was not the plan in any case. I will do what I can to help before I disappear from the city for a year at least. Can you help me with this?" She looks at me for a couple of moments and exhales tiredly. "Fine, let us go gallivanting, once more saving the innocent, just so we can get killed." I take a swig of the Morrowind drink, and damn, is it strong. I turn to Durek, who has already finished his, and he merely nods to me wordlessly. I smile and go back to my drink, thinking of shit I just got myself into. I understand that one should help those he can, but I also know that if we get caught doing anything against the locals, we will be properly fucked. Unfortunately, my youthful heart seems to have won out this time, but I guess that giving Ulfric the middle finger is a worthy endeavor no matter how minor the act may be. We meet Ambrose Renar late in the night and sit down with him. We're joined by 3 more Dunmare who seem to be wearing light armor and are armed with crossbows and short swords. The lead among them looks at the club owner for a second before turning to me. "So, I hear we have a bleeding heart visiting," he says as if finding it funny, but continues after a moment. "Anyways, name's Davos. Me and my boys have been looking into the Inwas that have been terrorizing the quarter these past few months, and found that they have been kidnapping orphans for about a week now." He spits on the ground, and I have the urge to do it as well, but this time I do maintain complete control. Self-discipline will be a must from now on, it seems. I don't know what they are planning to do with them, but I hear all manner of rumors about a coven of local rogue mages in the hills buying up anyone they can from the black market. For what reason, I don't know, nor do I frankly care, he continues in a harsh tone. The 2 groups of Inwas will be meeting each other by the docks in about 2 days before heading out towards the mages together. We are planning on gutting them all and making it look like they offed each other. If you agree to help us, you can keep a good third of the loot we find there." He looks at me expecting an answer. I turn towards my companions, who both nod, one with much less enthusiasm than the other. "Sure, we'll help you out. When do we meet up?" Quest initiated. Destroy the Nordic slaver gangs terrorizing the Grey Quarter. Reward: good reputation with most Dunmare who learn of you and an understanding of stealth. The day after tomorrow on midnight. Keep in mind not to draw any suspicion on yourself. I nod and soon we disperse. The next day passes relatively peacefully. In the morning, I went to the palace and handed Balgruuf's letter to the steward. I really don't want to meet Ulfric before I was nice and ready to gut him. I spend most of my day offering to heal any minor injuries the locals have for a pittance, or even free if they seem really destitute. This gets me some goodwill, but I notice some Nords glaring at me from a distance. I also managed to sell off the weapons we got from the skeletons to the local general store. My companions spend the day either training in the case of my orc friend, or just relaxing in an attempt to get over her annoyance with the situation in the case of Morgan. I am unable to make too much progress in my magic, as I've already read and reread all the books I have with me about a dozen times, and I really shouldn't practice fire magic inside a city. So I joined Durek for some light sparring, so I can get used to my new weapon, in which I get completely destroyed within seconds. We spend most of the evening in the corner club preparing for what was coming. Finally, midnight arrives, and we head towards the dock. We reach the docks relatively unnoticed. The Argonian workers seem to have all thankfully gone back to their sleeping quarters. The docks are far larger than I guessed, and covered in warehouses, so the 2 or 3 guards on duty tonight do not notice us. We find our partners in crime for the night. There are 6 more of them than before, all equipped with the same gear I saw them carry when we first met. Davos notices us and approaches while handing us all black cloaks. "Good you came. The gangs will be meeting in about 10 minutes. From what we gather, there will be about a dozen each, so we must hit them with all we have if we are to have a chance." I ponder this for a moment and ask, should I use magic attacks? I don't think that any of the Nords use pyromancy, so it would be harder to hide our involvement. He thinks for a second and shakes his head. We can always just dress one of the dead ones in some cheap robes. We've also prepared some witnesses among the dock workers. And besides, if I didn't guess you were a mage, I'd have no reason to even invite you here in the first place. Understandable, I nod. That's fair enough. What can we expect from the guards? How quickly do they respond? Usually they don't give shit about what is happening, but now we're going to be making a ruckus in one of the warehouses, so we can expect them to get here in minutes at worst, he explains quickly. What do we do after we have dealt with them? I hope you have some plans for a getaway. I question, my voice cautious. He snorts, don't worry. Me and my group have a bunch of safe houses, but for you, we have prepared a boat at the edge of the docks. While I won't stop you from staying in Windhelm, Azura knows we could use the help. I know that you are just passing by and will be under a lot of suspicion considering you already have some reputation in the city. Will he try to fuck me over? Is there really a boat? We can always just swim away, but that will be very uncomfortable. I have an idea. Can you show me to the boat? It would be better if we stocked it up in advance, so we don't have to lug our things while we run. He looks at me for a bit, not showing any offense at my distrust, and nods, sure it's nearby. Follow me. We're quickly shown to the boat and unload anything we won't need in the fight. Morgan comments how I am finally using my head instead of just rushing forward, but I merely shrug at her in response. I do not regret my recent gallivanting one bit. I came here to adventure, and adventure I will. With me still deep in my thoughts, I don't notice when everyone tenses up, Durek shakes me awake, and we get ready. The warehouse across from our own is dimly lit, but I can see the insides with relative clarity. Only about 4 of them have any kind of armor. Most of them are carrying knives and some axes. It really is just a bunch of city gangers, huh? A part of me is disappointed, but I won't complain. Their numbers are still going to be an issue. In the corner, I see cages filled with gray-skinned children, which makes my blood boil. My orc friend almost rushes in, but holds himself back. Apparently, all are nagging about tactics, is finally getting into his head, or maybe he just didn't give a shit before, and now that there are stakes beyond his own life, he holds himself back. The gangers seem to be talking about distributing the profits. I wouldn't be surprised if they really did kill each other, but that would happen only after already selling the kids off, which would be pointless for us. For the elven vigilantes, sneak up the sides of the warehouse and set up at the windows while the remaining 5, including Davos. I suddenly notice a familiar face among them and whisper, Janassa, what are you doing here? She turns to me and amusedly says, well, I did say I was visiting family. Just not what kind of family. She smiles as she readies her weapons. I shake my head as we continue our approach. We all set up and get ready. I start casting a spinning firebolt. Morgan prepares her root traps and Durek positions himself for a charge, while our companions all aim their crossbows. At Davos' signal, all hell breaks loose. I immediately aim for one of the best equipped gangers who seems to be the leader of one of them. His instincts seem to be pretty damn good, because he simply tilts his head to the side on reflex. His counterpart, however, is not so lucky because he gets deeply acquainted with a bolt to the face. At the same time, 6 more get killed by crossbows. The remaining ones are stunned for a couple of seconds, which is enough for our ground group to charge in and take down some more of them. I charge the one that dodged my attack, casting oak flesh on myself and conjuring my saber. He notices me quickly and attacks with an axe and dagger combo. He seems trained but not too skilled. We exchange blows for some seconds when he manages to stab me in the chest with his knife. Thankfully, he didn't expect my skin to be too thick for iron weapons when combined with my padded shirt. So while he is distracted by my lack of reaction, I slash his neck and kill him almost instantly. Another one rushes me from the side, but I quickly turn him to ash with a wave of searing flames. I turn around and see that most of the gangers are already dead or dying, with only one of us having taken heavier injuries. The fighting continues around me as I go to heal him to at least give him enough time not to bleed out. He nods a thank you, and when I turn around to rejoin the fight, it already seems to be over with Davos finishing the last one by decapitating him. We are rejoined by the ones on the roof, with one remaining on lookout duty. The elves quickly free the children, some of whom are too tired to even walk. We quickly grab whatever of value that the gangs brought here and are warned by the lookout about the approaching guards. Davos, who is now carrying a child, tosses me a ruby, which I clumsily catch, and says, I know we merely offer share of the loot, but it was more formality. Thank you for your help, and may Azura give you luck before rushing up to the winding passages of the docks, quickly joined by the rest of his people. The three of us do not tarry. Even if we could still grab the weapons to sell, it won't matter if we are caught. We run towards the boat and aren't noticed by the approaching guards. There's a lot of noise coming from the warehouse, but thankfully we manage to row away before anyone decides to look around. With the heavy atmosphere slowly leaving us, Morgan slumps down. I simply relax onto my seat, and Dirk starts rowing with his usual gusto. We reach the coast before the sun rises and sit down to rest a bit. Well, that was an experience. I hope we won't be declared as outlaws in Windhelm tomorrow, I say to my companions, but I know deep down that realistically none of us were even noticed, so the only way we could get in trouble is if someone snitches on us. Dirk merely shrugs. Well, no one saw us, so I don't think there will be problems. Morgan adds, I'm just glad that this is all over and done with. Now we can finally get on with our business without you courageously jumping into the fray to save the poor children. While I understand that your people don't put value on their own, there is no need to project that onto those who never did you wrong, Morgan. I say, slightly annoyed at her. She pretends to ignore me, but the slight flinch I saw tells another story. Anyways, our next stop will be the village of Jarnstead, the southernmost settlement in the Winterhold hold, that we should get something to wear in the cold and maybe a guide. And rest. I really wanted to sit down for a bit, adds the witch. Finally, we'll get some rest as well. Anything you want, Dirk? I asked the energetic orc. Maybe he'll grab a bough or something. Those elves seem to know what they were doing. Might as well give a shot. He finishes with a smile as we both groan at the pun. After resting for a bit, we start walking Jarnstead, which is about a third of the way to Winterhold. I really don't want to camp in the snow. Our trip is thankfully boring, and we do reach the village. It looks almost exactly like the in-game Winterhold. Although still having more houses, the locals seem distrustful of us, but not nearly to the level of Windhelm. We choose to take our time and rest from all the excitement as agreed. Me and my witch friend start mixing all manner of ingredients, and she starts teaching me a bit of the basics she knows. Durek visits the local shop and gets us some thick cloaks with a good quality longbow and some arrows for himself, and goes to practice with it. At least he won't have to throw his only weapon anymore. Speaking of his weapon, I didn't really pay attention to it, but now that I take a closer look, it's a goddamn Orcish long spear, which yes does make sense. The dude is an orc, but those damn things are expensive. I guess it's his father's or something. I managed to get some healing done around the place and earn enough coin to cover our stay here. I wonder how much I would be able to earn when I become a master and go around healing noble kids or something. That will be nice. The next morning, we take a commission to hunt down an ice wraith that has been terrorizing the local livestock. We find it with relative ease, and while it did almost rip Durek's throat out, I hit it in the face with a good firebolt just in time. This earned us some more money and goodwill. After that, we mostly spent our time carousing with the locals and planning out a route. One of the local hunters even offered to guide us there for a fair price, which we accepted. Better not risk stumbling onto something very dangerous on our own. And I do for a fact remember there being a load of Falmer caves around. And for what we learned, there are also a bunch of Reiklings towards the mountains. We might sense some goblin slaying in the future. Later that day, we also got news of a terrible fight erupting in the Windhelm docks. People are saying that some maddened mages from outside the city controlled the poor innocent Nords into killing each other. And people are buying that shit. Seriously, what the fuck? We leave early the next day. The road to Winterhold will take us a day and a bit, which means at least one stop, and there are no inns this time. Marching to the snow as a fire-attuned creature is an experience I would most definitively wish upon my enemies. Seriously, it's almost like being burned alive, but in reverse. Thankfully we did buy those cloaks, or I would straight up be trying to warm myself with my spells at this point, and I assure you that is a terrible idea. Morgan seems to share my opinion of the weather, and is shaking even with the cloak. Durek, as is his usual MO, is just not giving a flying fuck. Seriously, what are you made of? Our escort doesn't even seem to notice the cold, but that one I can understand. He is a Daggeth damn Nord. On the road, we are spotted by Snow Bear, but the hunter instructs us to keep our distance and calmly walk away. They are not aggressive in this time of the year. Thankfully, we are left alone. The night is an absolute hell for me. The tents are warm, but are constantly invaded by cold winds no matter what I do. It is like having a too small blanket with one end constantly being uncovered. Everyone seems amused by my overreaction in their own words, but I'm built for volcanoes, not glaciers, damn it. The morning comes far too slowly, but thankfully it is a warm day, or well, warmer than the previous one anyway. Thankfully, we only have some hours of walking left. Finally, after what felt like an age of trudging through snow and cold winds, we were greeted by dilapidated but still standing stone walls surrounding not quite a city, but certainly a town, and behind it, I see the college in all its glory, also far bigger than what I remember, but I will take it all in when I am actually closer to it. Before we enter, I check the progress I made in these couple of days. Quest complete. Reward granted. Stealth novice. Vit. 8 equals 8.2. We are let through the gates of the city after a brief inspection. The guards seem indifferent to us. I guess that makes sense, since a large educational center will bring people from all over the world. I am proven right soon after, as there seem to be far more outlanders living in the city. I notice all manner of people milling about, mostly Nords, and to a lesser degree Dunmare, which is logical considering the proximity of Morrowind. There's even a not too tall mushroom tower at the edge of the city, likely belonging to some Telvanni loon. There are Argonian workers and Khajiit traders. Surprisingly, there is even some Altmare present. They don't seem to be Thalmor agents, but to be fair, that would describe an agent's job. Speaking of the city, its stone walls seem to end at the cliff that resulted from the Great Collapse, being the event that destroyed most of the city. The houses are mostly made of stone and seem to be made to keep as much heat inside as possible. The streets are neither too wide nor too narrow, and there seems to be at least some healthy commerce going on, mostly alchemy shops and enchanting services. But there is also the more mundane shops and smiths. The Jarl's Longhouse seems more like an old Nordic stone keep, and I count some 100 guards on duty, with some of them even wearing robes under their armor. Didn't the Jarl have a massive hate boner for mages in the game? Maybe he still hates them, but isn't a complete idiot. As we continue walking toward the college, I finally get a glimpse of what lies down the cliff, and am surprised by a small dock and some warehouses. Seems that this place does deserve the moniker of a city after all. Taking a final turn towards the college, I am greeted by an absolutely massive building. The main circular section that made up the college is at least twice as large as the one in the game, with 3 more smaller ones connected to it via thick walled passages in a triangular formation. The edges of the college plateau, not taken up by buildings, are covered in small parks filled with vibrant trees and flowers, which they somehow grew in this accursed cold. The eastern and western circles have 3 tall and wide towers spreading outwards, with the central one having only one taller one, which I guess belongs to the Archmage. The northernmost circle has no open space and is just a tall cylinder with only small windows and no exits at the top. I guess that this is either the library or practice ground. Deciding to take a deeper look, I activate my third eye and am almost blinded by the amount of magicka radiating from the place. Taking some time to calm myself while clutching my head, I look again and see that every tower has its own aura. One is covered in what I can only describe as roiling thunder that is somehow burning and freezing at the same time. One feels like the void and honestly scares the shit out of me. The next seems to be a wall of iron and rock, constantly changing between each. This is the eastern wing. The western wing towers are a bit more subdued. One is glowing in a gentle gold light. The other is there, but also not, and the last one's aura looks like innumerable dancing runes forming circles around each other. All of them overlap to make a massive ward that stretches all the way around the college in a ball shape, even below ground. A/N. Eastern one is Indistortion E Conjuration S Alteration, while the western one is N Restoration W Illusion and S Ritualism / Mysticism. Guess that is how the place survived the Great Collapse, huh? My companions look at me worriedly, but I wave them off, saying the wind got to me. Finally, we reach the entrance and are greeted by a tall Altmare woman I recognize as Faralda. Before we go to greet her, I turn towards my orc friend. Well, we finally reached our destination. I guess this is where we part ways. It has been a blast traveling with you, my friend. He laughs with his usual gusto and says, "Indeed it has, my friend, but this is not the end of our adventure. When you are done drowning yourself in books, we will meet again to smash some skulls and slay more evildoers. before turning to Morgan, who gives him a much less enthusiastic farewell. His response is a grin and a wave. After Durek leaves, the two of us turn towards the college and start approaching the gate. We are finally here. Time to grind like a madman. Morgan looks at me weirdly before shrugging it off as more of my bullshit and following me. Durek Grobar POV. I wave to my snarky witch friend and get going. Whiterun won't reach itself. I still remember meeting them. I was barely making ends meet after being kicked out of the stronghold by my older brother. I tried hunting for food, but could never catch the wildlife by surprise with my spear. Even throwing it didn't work. I did manage to get some work at the wood mill of Riverwood, but it was still not enough. I am a growing lad, and the money I made was just too little. Thankfully, one night, in the tavern, I met my weird duo of buddies. Raven is apparently the descendant of great warriors who slew many foes, and has come to Skyrim to follow in their footsteps. While most orcs would consider magic the weakling's weapon, I know that it takes as much, if not more, skill to shoot fire or ice as it does to thrust a spear or swing an axe. He seems detached at times, almost as if staring at things that aren't there, but when the going gets tough, he is there with you swinging at your foes while burning them. I thought at first he might be one of those selfish mage types, but as soon as he saw his tribe was in trouble, he offered to help them without thinking. He seems to foresee trouble in the future, and may Malakath damn me if I am not there helping him when it happens. Morgan, the escaped Reach woman, seems arrogant at first glance, speaking down to most people and being very cynical. But underneath is someone hurt by betrayal and looking for safety. At first I thought her to be another selfish mage, but when we were spied on by the Dunmare woman in Whiterun, and she immediately went to check if she was going to spread Raven's secret, I knew she was another true friend. Finally done with my reminiscing and thoroughly hurting my brain with all this thinking, I continue my journey to rejoin the companions. Truly, they're the perfect band for me. They understand what life is. Drink well, fight well, and fuck well. Just as Malakath intended. As we approach the gates of the thankfully fully walled bridge of the college, I take in the sight of the one guarding it. She is a very tall Altmare woman with long orange-brown hair, and more interestingly her eyes seem to glow with constantly dancing lightning. She appears disinterested in us, not even giving her full attention, and says in a bored tone, "If you are here to complain about the college, please, for the love of Julianos, just go to the Jarl's Court Wizard." I fake cough and say, "Actually, we were hoping to join the college. Me and my companion have been traveling for some time in hopes of learning the secrets of magic," hoping that my fake reverence might actually make her listen. She finally turns to us fully. "You both seem young, but have already reached a good level of magicka. Fine, I will never say no to prospective new students." She says with some barely noticed enthusiasm, "The test is rather simple. You tell me what you think you are best at while also mentioning all your other skills. I test your application of that knowledge. Keep in mind that the tuition for a novice is 300 septims, a good 2 months' pay for laborers, and while you can earn it inside of the college after your entry, the first one will have to be paid in full." Oof, that would leave us almost destitute, but thankfully we are both apprentice-level mages. Morgan and I nod to each other, and I start explaining my skill set. I am capable of apprentice-level destruction and restoration with minor skill in alteration, conjuration, and alchemy. I can also identify enchantments pretty consistently. She nods and starts writing it down. "Very well, name?" "Raven." She seems dissatisfied. "Full name, please. There are rewards to detect such things for new applicants." I sigh and hope this doesn't turn into a shitstorm. "Raven of House Daggeth." She looks at me with immense curiosity, almost non-metaphorically burning into me with her eyes. Interesting, very interesting. And now I no longer feel safe. After some time staring at me like I am a very fun new trinket she just discovered, she turns to Morgan. "Your skills and name, please." Morgan hesitates for a second, but still says, "Morgan of the Reach. Apprentice destruction and alteration with some restoration and apprentice-level alchemy." She seems less willing to dissect my friend than me, but there is still some curiosity. "It has been a long time since we had one of your people in our halls. I hope there will be no issues with the rest of the student body." The last part is said with some threat. Morrigan shakes her head quickly and starts to say something before I interrupt her. Both of us have come here to learn and become more powerful. As long as our origins aren't shouted out at the town square, we will be just another pair of students. Faralda looks at us for a second, then nods as if not caring in the slightest. She was probably obligated to say that anyway. Who cares about apprentices burning each other to death? It's to fuel their growth, I am sure. Note the sarcasm. Very well, let us proceed with the examination. We are asked to show off our skills with me being the first. I use my improved flames and firebolt, which seems to genuinely impress her, probably because she is the resident master of destruction magic. I quickly show off my bound blade and oak flesh combo, finishing with a ward that seems sturdier than when I first learned it. Morrigan shows off her cryomancy, surprising me by casting an ice shard, followed by her root spell and the small bit of restoration I forced her to learn. Faralda nods at us and says with just a tiny bit of praise in her voice, very good. You are both eligible for the rank of apprentice, so the tuition will be halved. You'll, however, be expected to complete a bi-monthly task for the college until you advance further in rank. I start to ask, but am quickly interrupted. Don't worry, you will be paid for said tasks. And as you will be earning the college reputation with most of them, a sum will be taken off your tuition for every task you accomplish. I nod and wait for her to direct us where we need to go. You will now follow me to the central square of the college. Our master wizard Mirabelle Irvine will show you to your assigned quarters and explain the lessons you will be taking. We nod and follow her. The walk on the bridge is quiet with seemingly nothing happening around us. Being curious, I activate my third eye and see a bunch of wards constantly scanning us as we pass. Fuck, I wouldn't ever want to attack this place. As we cross the threshold into the largest circle of the college, the entire atmosphere seems to switch from cold and windy to perfectly temperate and calm. Looking around, I see a massive statue of Shalater at the center. Behind it is what I remember as being the entrance to the Archmage Tower and library. To my sides, I see the passages to the other sections with a circular wall, seeming to be the dormitories for both professors and students. There are far more people than I expected milling about, talking to each other and just generally relaxing. No one seems to be casting any magic, which I guess is reserved for a practice area. We are swiftly led towards the side of the main tower, where I see a short Breton woman that seems to radiate magicka, talking very heatedly with a high elf wearing gaudy Thalmor robes. As we approach, the Altmare walks off, seemingly angered by whatever he was told. Mirabelle looks up at us and smiles lightly. Oh, some new students I see, then turns toward our escort. I trust you tested them already? She asked with slight annoyance. I guess there is a story there. Faralda huffs and says, yes, I tested them and all they said they could do. Both are apprentice level in destruction with additional skills that would qualify them anyway. Good. We wouldn't want a repeat of what happened a year ago. She trails off before continuing. You two are in luck. The classes will be starting in 2 days. The first class will be held by the Archmage, and you are expected to be present. There will be no tolerance for tardiness. She finishes sternly before pulling out 2 bracelets with the symbol of the college. You will be required to wear these at all times you are at the college, except within your own rooms. They are keyed into the wards. Without them, you will be immediately detained by the defense system. I hope you are not foolish enough to test this. We both quickly nod, which seems to satisfy her. After you have reached the rank of adept, you will be able to commission custom robes for yourselves, but for now, this will have to suffice. She looks at our robes with some dissatisfaction. Follow me to your new dormitories. There are 5 more new apprentices this year, but don't worry, everyone will have their own room. If you can't all get along, just keep in mind to keep all disputes below a certain level. There is enough trouble and suspicion with the locals as is. We don't need a bunch of apprentices blowing up the nearby houses when they get into a pissing match. Surprisingly crass for the oh-so-noble Bretons, huh? But I get it, she must be really tired from all the shit she has to deal with. The now agitated Faralda excuses herself and probably goes back to her bridge guard duty while we follow Mirabelle. This whole situation kind of takes me back to my college days. I just hope I'm not stuck with assholes again. Back then I could do nothing to them except talk back. Now I have fire at my fingertips and the will to use it. The inside of the dormitory is dimly lit in an ethereal blue coming from the lamps on the walls. There's a main hall area with a kitchen and some tables surrounded by 10 rooms. Mirabelle points us toward 2 of the rooms and leaves to get back to whatever she was doing before we interrupted her. We split up and start exploring. The room is spacious for what one could expect as a student. There's a bed, some shelves, and a table, all of seemingly good quality. There's also a couple of books filled with beginner spells for all of the different schools of magic. When I am done with exploring, this should keep me occupied. I take my time to sort my meager possessions and decide to look around and possibly meet my fellow apprentices. Entering the previously empty main hall, I notice 2 Nords, one male and one female, talking to each other animatedly about something. They notice me, and the man quickly waves me towards them. They both look very similar, with blonde hair and blue eyes. Twins, I guess, as I greet them. Hey there, I am Raven. My companion and I joined the college sometime earlier. I am guessing you are our fellow apprentices? I say while pointing to Morgan, who has joined us after hearing the conversation. She also introduces herself to them. He smiles at me and says, I am Bor, and this is my sister Brienne. She waves at us. We joined the college a day before the 2 of you, and we're just discussing the first lesson. Apparently, the Archmage himself will be holding it. I wonder what it will be about, some secret magic, or maybe even a recipe for luck. His sister smacks him on the head while giggling. No, you idiot. Of course he wouldn't, that would be irresponsible. I let out a quiet laugh. Well, I wouldn't say no to a luck potion, but your sister is most likely right. I am guessing he will teach us something basic and universally important. We will know in 2 days anyway. What brings the 2 of you to learn magic? Please do take no offense, but while this is Skyrim, it is rare for Nords to actually try. Hearing my words, they both frown before Brienne speaks up. It is true that most Nords look at magic with disdain, but some families are still known for following the old ways of our people. For example, our clan, the Flameheart, have been renowned defenders of Dawnstar for centuries now. I nod at this. I see. Please forgive my dumb question. I am new to Skyrim, and the reaction among your people to mages is usually neutral at best. Bor chuckles at this. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the idiots called us elf lovers, or something equally idiotic for using the thing that is in every one of us just so they can feel better about their own inadequacies. Brienne seems saddened by his words, but doesn't correct him. All of us turn silent, as the atmosphere turns slightly awkward when Morgan of all people says with genuine curiosity, So what spells do you know? We spent some time discussing our skills and what we want to learn at the college. The Flameheart clan is a clan of renowned destruction mages, but is also known for their healing skills. When I mention my modifications to my pyromancy spells, they both seem surprised. How did you manage that? Controlling magicka to that extent at our level should be almost impossible. Even the brightest mages take years to modify their spells. Bor asks, his brows furrowing. Thinking about it, magic control has always been way too easy for me. At first, I thought it might be the talent I got combined with the Mage Stone, but after hearing Bor's explanation, I think back to every time I've been modifying my spells. It seems that I've been activating my third eye and using it to guide the magicka. Instinctually, do I have a weird magic Byakugan or something, or is having a visual aid just that helpful? Well, whatever it is, it has helped me immensely already. I don't know what to tell you. I guess it's just Dunmare being good at fire control. I pretend like you didn't already know that. No reason to air out all my secrets to people I just met. He looks at me not quite angry, but irritated that I am playing dumb and shrugs, whatever, keep your secrets, and quickly changes his demeanor, likely throwing it to the back of his head. So about that bound weapon, I get that you need a mental image, but for whatever reason, I just can't get it down. We continue discussing for a good hour before we were joined by our remaining classmates. We exchange greetings and get back to our discussion with the 3 now joining us. Marwyn is a short brown-haired Breton from the city of Daggerfall, a member of one of the local historian families, who, as Bretons tend to do, wanted him to continue their trade and do literally nothing else with his life. He escaped his home to travel the world and follow his real passion, enchantment. Tiberius Gracchus is the tall and bulky son of a legionary legate stationed in Skyrim. Apparently his father wanted him to become a warrior like himself, but Tiberius, being a lazy ass, prefers to summon others to do his fighting for him. He convinced his father to let him go to the college. I guess the man just wanted his son to do something. Tiberius is also a massive empire simp. Like, seriously, dude, is there one sentence that leaves your mouth without praising the glorious empire? Thankfully, the boner he has for the Tower of White Gold is shared by the hate boner he has for the Thalmor. The last of my new class is a Dunmare woman named Idrasa Moabine. She is apparently the daughter of the owner of the local mushroom tower, who I learned is the renowned staff-maker Diran of House Telvanni. She was basically forced to join the college by her father, who didn't want to spend time teaching her the basic shit she could learn here. Thankfully, she seems to have some interest in alteration magic, so it shouldn't be too hard for her. She has silver hair and is pale by Dunmare standards. She is also unnaturally pretty, like I thought I was straight up getting bewitched levels of pretty. Looking at her with my third, I don't sense any illusion, so it was most likely a permanent alteration ritual, or maybe she just won the genetic lottery. Guarding my mind against the pitfalls of potential simpery, I continue discussing all manner of topics with the rest of the apprentices. Morgan seems to be getting more comfortable with people now that she is no longer on the run. Hopefully she will one day be able to recover from the scars left by her mother's betrayal. After we are done talking sometime past midnight, I return to my room and crack open the levitation spell book disguised as a mana theory paper given to me by the college. Just because it is against the law doesn't mean most mages will give a single shit. They might not use the spells in public, but I guarantee you they spam that shit more than I do flames. The levitation spell made for an interesting read. Like most mysticism spells, it is based almost purely on magicka control. It consists of creating a platform of semi-solid magicka beneath your feet and using it to float in the air. While it doesn't offer great speed or stability of flight, it is still immensely useful, and only a fool would refuse to learn it because of some retarded law. I managed to understand the main principles of casting it, but one night of reading wasn't enough to attempt to actualize it. It was enough, however, to give me something. Mysticism Basic. Getting access to an entirely new school of magic is a pretty damn good way to start the day. After taking a moment to make myself look proper, I leave my room. It seems I woke up very early because most of the other rooms are still closed with a slightly glowing rune floating in front of them. The only other person awake is Marwin, who seems to be drinking something. He gives me an unfocused wave and goes back to his drink. I sit next to him and ask him what it is. He seems kind of shy, likely being used to talking to new people, especially of a different race. It's just some coffee that came in from Hammerfell. The prices went up like mad after the war, or so I hear, but the college gets a batch from time to time. He has been here for a good 2 weeks longer than us, so it is unsurprising that he knows such things. He points me to the small sack in the kitchen, and I quickly get to making myself a strong cup. Oh, the holiest of drinks, how I have missed you. We chat about our travels in Skyrim while drinking before I get an idea. You've been here for 2 weeks already, right? He nods, now far more lively than when I found him. I was planning to explore the place a bit. Would you care to show me around? He nods quickly. Sure, I was going to visit the library and practice ground in a bit anyway. Might as well take a walk first. I think about waking Morgan up, but we were traveling for a fairly long time, and it is very early, so I might as well leave her to rest. The college courtyard is mostly empty at this time of day. There's some night guard walking around waiting for their shift to end, but everyone else is still inside. Remember in my own student days, I guess that most people here like to sleep in after long nights of study. We take our time seeing the alchemy gardens surrounding the buildings, with Marwin telling me about some plants I don't recognize in their use. The gardens are sectioned in such a way that allows the plants that work best alongside each other, kind of like an organic food farm. There are runic circles around the more fragile ones, protecting them from the harsh climate, or adapting the air around them to best help them grow. We also visit the 2 circles to the east and west, with them mostly mimicking the central one being made from large stone blocks, with the tower entrances enchanted with symbols respective to their schools of magic. There are also statues of all the archmages situated between said entrances, but none of them are even close to the size of Shalater's statue back at middle of the college. After touring the place a bit more and looking at the frozen landscape to the north, Marwin leads me to the library, which is situated in the northern section of the college above the practice grounds. It seems kind of irresponsible to have a library above the place where people practice blowing shit up, but the ungodly number of ward around the place reassure me that they have it covered. The library is far more lively than I expected at this time of day, with a lot of older students still likely cramming their assignments. There are even some that fell asleep. One was about to start drooling on a book when he was lifted in the air and tossed beyond the doors of the library. A gruff, old-looking orc slightly growled before picking the book up and looking at us. "Welcome to the Arcaneum, which might as well be my own plane of oblivion. I am Urag Groshub, the keeper of this place." He turns to me specifically, likely already having met the bookish Marwyn. "Some of this collection can be dated back to the Second Era. You will respect the books, or—" He waves in the direction he just yeeted the poor student. I nod at him, not at all surprised. Urag was always a favorite of mine, either because he was an orc mage breaking the stereotype or just due to his serious demeanor. "Of course not, sir. I wasn't raised in the streets. The books will be safe when in my hands," I say in a fake offended voice. He snorts at my pompous response. Good enough. Now, is there anything specific you were looking for, or were you just taking in the sights?" "Guess that newcomers tend to do that. Keep in mind, I would recommend waiting for the start of the lessons so you don't take on too much material at once." I take a second to think about my response and finally answer. I was looking for techniques that might improve the control and reserves of my magicka. The spellbooks provided in my room will keep me occupied for some time, but expanding my foundation is best started as soon as possible. He nods at this, pleased. "Good. Most fools just want to learn how to throw fireballs. And then you tell them they have to actually not suck first." He snorts, "Follow me." He leads us to the back and hands me a book titled Arcane Ascendance. This is the most used technique among the college mages. At first it might seem simple, but that is for good reason. Every mage modifies the process to further improve their chosen field, with the benefits growing the more you personalize and perfect it. Make sure to be very careful of how far you decide to push yourself. Overdoing the exercise will hinder you more than help you. I thank him, and with a nod, he returns to whatever he was reading before we arrived. Marwyn grabs a book on Nordic enchantment techniques as I start reading the manual. The application is as simple as the resident orc librarian had said. You take in magicka from the atmosphere and suffuse your entire being in it, essentially adapting your body to containing more of it, while also having to keep control of any outbursts, which will hurt a lot. It is recommended that one doesn't spend more than 2 hours a day practicing it, as any more leaves one lethargic and unfocused until they rest. I reread the diagrams a couple of times, and after informing my new friend, headed to the practice area. The inside of the now-named Hall of Refinement is very simple looking, once again being a large circular room surrounded by more rooms intended for practicing specific kinds of spells. I quickly notice one intended for my training in the mysticism section of the room, and enter it. Inside, there's a small instruction manual explaining that the room will alert me after 2 hours have passed. After calming my mind, I sit down and start practicing the technique without using my third eye as an experiment. Controlling the flow of magicka outside of my body is very easy as always, but the moment it enters me, it feels like trying to swim through sand. Sighing at my perceived failure, I activate my third eye and try and look within myself. The experience feels very unnatural. I can't quite see the inside of myself, but I can definitely feel it. Using the eye as visual aid, I try guiding the magicka again, and this time I manage to, while still with some difficulty, properly cycle it through my body. The process is not quite painful, but still feels very weird and uncomfortable. I quickly notice that the space behind my forehead is taking up the lion's share of the magicka and sigh. I guess that even a great gift has some drawbacks, but then again, this gives me hope that the eye could be improved with enough refinement. Time passes incredibly quickly, and I find myself woken from my trance by the flickering light of practice room. Guess I got too into it. Checking my progress, I am pleasantly surprised. Mysticism Novice. Arcane Ascension Beginner. Vit. 8.2 equals 8.5. Mind. 15.5 equals 16. Mag. 133 equals 140. After my first brush with becoming a young master, I returned to the Arcaneum to find that Marwyn was now joined by Tiberius. The two were discussing the dangers of summoning Daedra, while looking through a book on the topic. I went to Urag to thank him for his recommendation and asked if he had any books on Dovizil. I might never be able to rend mountains, but if I want to get even a single shout down, starting early is a must. Sure, we have some old tomes on it. A warning though, many have tried to make heads or tails of what to do with it, and the furthest someone got was minor enchantment applications. There were some that managed to learn a word or two for shouting, but it was rarely worth the effort. The librarian says in a grumbling tone. I nod and say, well, it will at least make for an interesting read, and who knows? I might get lucky. He scoffs and waves me off. The book I started with was more a dictionary than any kind of instruction manual. There were only the words in Dova and their presumed meaning when translated to Tamrielic. My main goal with the dragon language was to learn the slow time shout. The rest might be more destructive or impressive, but giving myself more time to spam spells like a madman will always trump those advantages. Hopefully my relative age will give me an advantage in learning it. The hours quickly passed while I was immersed in the book until Morgan found me. You could have waited for me before exploring, she says annoyed. And when I got up, you were still asleep. We were traveling for a long time, and I thought you might need the rest. I say, not turning from my book. She narrows her eyes. And since when am I so delicate that I can't get up in the morning? I sigh and finally look at her. Morgan, even ignoring my previous words, is it so weird that I chose not to drag you everywhere I go? She is silent for a couple of moments before she shakes her head and sits across me. No, I guess it is not. She goes to say something else, but stops herself. Listen, I'm not going anywhere, but you need to decide what you want to do now that you are safe. I have my own ambitions and goals, and just following me around can't be the extent of yours. She frowns, deep in thought for a good 10 minutes before saying, yes, you are right. The entire time I was only thinking about running away, not what I was going to do afterward. I smile good. I am glad you understand. We chat about our discoveries about the college for a short while, and I show her the Arcane Ascension book. She seems interested in it and leaves to try it out. The rest of the day, I spent reading, walking around, or relaxing in the gardens. Today was mourned as the 4th of Frostfall, or Monday, October 4th for those uninitiated, which marked the start of the lessons for new apprentices at the College of Winterhold. We gathered in the Hall of the Elements, or the lecture hall as it was known to most people. The 7 of us were joined by some older apprentices along with a couple of professors who were most likely there just to show themselves, so we can remember them. There's a lot of excited murmuring among the students, but I remained mostly quiet. After waiting for a couple of minutes, a tall Dunmare man, wearing the bluish-purple robes of the Archmage, walked in from the side, and everyone quieted down. He took a couple of seconds to see if everyone was present, nodding at the older students, seemingly satisfied by their presence. He spent a good minute looking over us newbies and then checking his notes, most likely confirming something when I felt a spell brush over all of us. Looking at the source with some caution, I found out that the Archmage was scanning the new students, irritating but understandable. When our eyes met, his eyebrow rose, and he gave me a small smile before he finally fake coughed and started his speech. I am happy to see so many new faces this year. I am Savos Arin, the Archmage of this college. The magical arts are as old as history, and it gladdens my heart that you all have decided to delve into their mysteries with us. The things you will learn here will last you for a lifetime. Several if you're talented. He pauses for a bit after his intro. I will begin by giving some ground rules. The research into any school of magic is not strictly prohibited on college grounds. However, if you break the law of the land in an attempt to further said research, the punishment will be severe. At this, he flares his magical presence at us, and I am blinded for a second. He continues as if nothing happened. Any dispute between college members will be solved either by mediation of a senior member or, if that fails, a non-lethal magical duel. Let me reiterate that. Under no circumstances are you to permanently harm a fellow member. Finally, every mission taken by a student will be checked and verified multiple times to ensure its required skill level. There will be no complaints when you accept an assignment. He takes break from speaking and drinks some water while the other students start murmuring excitedly once again. Another fake cough interrupts them. Now that the unpleasantries are out of the way, I will explain the course of your education. The college prides itself in the freedom of its members. There are some essential skills that you will have to pick up during your first year along with a more rigid lesson program, but afterwards you will be able to choose whatever you wish to do with your time here. The things I require from everyone consist of learning all of the spells provided in your rooms. For those who didn't have the time to look through them, these are spells from every school of magic, the mastery of which will allow you to survive most encounters or at least run away. He looks toward the disgruntled Nords present among us. Now I know that running away isn't the most honorable thing, but we aren't warriors here. We are scholars. And while we might be able to cause great destruction, sometimes a retreat is the better choice. They all seem to be at least somewhat placated by this. Back to the program. Alongside learning these spells, you will also take the time to visit every class held during the next 2 weeks. And after being introduced to everything that is offered to you, you will choose what you wish to focus on. The limit will be 3 schools. And before some of you start complaining, no, I don't care how hardworking you are. Some things take time, and I will not have you blowing yourself up or turning into catgirls because you can't show some damn patience. There is definitely some fun history there. He takes a second for his words to sink in, and before some idiots can start complaining despite them, starts introducing the professors to his side. I recognize some of them, but knowing I will meet them later, I only half listen to the introductions. Now that the formalities are out of the way, it is time to begin the lesson. After saying that he seems to suddenly turn into another person as his inner nerd awakens, I will start with a rather simple question. What is Magicka? What is Magicka? Tiberius raises his hand at this, and the Archmage points at him. It is the fuel we use for our magic, he says, somewhat unsure. Savos nods. True. When it comes to application, it is indeed the fuel to our fire, so to say. But what is it? Anyone else? He looks around the room and points to Marwyn, who is still as shy as yesterday. Is it the energy that makes up a being's spirit? While it doesn't make the entire spirit, it is the thing that gives it weight, he says with air quotes. But that is merely one of the things that it is. Does anyone else have an idea? I try to remember either from my previous or current life and hesitantly raise my hand. He nods my way and I speak. It is the raw energy that permeates all of existence. It is the building blocks of reality. And when focus can be directed to change said reality, he seems to agree and nods. Indeed, it can be called that and can be used to alter the world. But it does have limitations. He turns toward the other Dunmare in our group, who rose her hand. And what do you think, Miss Moabine? She calmly says, it is the cosmic energy flowing from Aetherius to Mundus through the sun and stars, left behind by Magnus after the creation of our world. It is, as my colleague said, the material for which the world itself was made. The Archmage seems satisfied with our collective answer. Indeed, Magicka, being the Iliad word for magic or mana as some cultures call it, is all these things and more. It is the tool that we use to become more than what we were born with, and with which we ascend beyond the mere mortals who fear and loathe us. It is also a drug so addictive that skooma might seem like a morning snack in comparison. Very dramatic, but also true. The feeling of it flowing through your body is like a constant high. No wonder most mages are depicted as cackling madmen. That is exactly why you must remember that while it is a great gift and power, it is also a great burden. Don't let the meager strength you achieve get to your head and lead you down a path of foolishness or into the maws of beings far more powerful. Without context, this is just a boring, with great power speech. But knowing his backstory, he really does just want us to be cautious and not get ourselves enslaved by Daedra or worse. The Archmage takes a moment and starts speaking once more. Now that we have something close to a consensus of what Magicka is, let us move on to a very simple application of it. He casts a candlelight in his right hand and raises it. This is the novice-level spell candlelight. It is very simply a focused ball of Magicka mixed with the intent to create light. I want all of you to try this. We all immediately get to casting. Idresa and the twins manage it immediately, likely having already learned it. I take some more time trying to get the intent part of the spell right, but am soon successful. It takes about a minute more for everyone else to get it. The Archmage nods, satisfied. Good. Now that we have an example, I will explain how the act of doing magic works. As you might have learned from doing any spell, magic consists of 3 main elements: the will to enact it, the energy to fuel it, and the intent to guide and shape it. He starts walking around while showing us illusions to best help us understand his explanation. The most basic applications of magic start simply with an intense wish to do something. This can best be shown by the flame spell. You desire to burn something. The magicka within you reacts and is transformed into flames. This is how the first Ayleid sorcerers learn magic. Over the millennia, the study of magic has become more and more advanced and complex until at one point mere intent could no longer suffice. That is when mental images, self-hypnotism, and finally runes came into play. The mages of old realized that creating an association in one's mind and then using said association to direct a more complex spell can produce far better and safer results than merely wishing something hard enough and ramming a shipload of magicka into it. There are many different runic languages across Tamriel, usually applied in enchantments. But for spellcasting, most mages use the arcane script, which was created over millennia of trial and error. He creates a large illusion showing over 100 symbols written in a similar style. I raise my hand, and he nods at me. So, why haven't some of us had any interaction with said script? We are already apprentice mages. There should have at least been a hint of it. He thinks for a second before asking, "Have you ever read an adept spellbook?" I shake my head, and he nods in confirmation. Then that is why you haven't yet had any interaction with it. Most spells below the adept level do not need the arcane script. And to be fair, it is very difficult to find the script itself written down beyond a learning institution or an old magical family. Any copy of it is usually confiscated for even the most minor of infractions to keep it from the wrong hands. Well, in most places, that is. Trying to take it from a Telvanni mage usually results in explosions or an army of Daedra. We share a chuckle with a Dracid joining us. It's a shame that most of my father's stuff got disappeared after he died, but I guess old Bobby didn't want to give me an entire library's worth of spells without any effort. The Archmage continues his explanation. After a very long time of using the arcane script, the world itself started associating certain symbols with certain effects. That is why we don't need to spend years training our subconscious to use the script. Thank fuck for that. Now, for the best part of any learning experience. He spreads his arms over dramatically. My fellows seem excited, but I already know where this is going. Homework, Yup. Everyone deflates faster than a Thalmor does a racism, while the professors quietly laugh at our misery. The Archmage continues. I want all of you to memorize the entire script by the end of your first year. It is a long-term project, yes, but if you want to keep up with your peers, you will need to be able to read, write, and most importantly, understand the arcane script. Otherwise, learning anything above low adept spells will be extremely hard, and not to mention the casting being incredibly inefficient. The students accept their fate, and the lesson soon ends with the Archmage waving at us almost mockingly. Guess he experienced something similar when he first started out. Oh well, if he wasn't at least a bit petty, I would think him unworthy of a position of authority. Most of the apprentices head back to the dormitories while I head off towards the library. If I have to learn some squiggly lines to become powerful, I will learn the damn squiggly lines. Spending an entire afternoon memorizing a new language was not something I expected I would have to do when I started my magical journey. Now I understand why mages in most places are considered to be the nerds. This shit takes some willpower to read. It is not that difficult, but I can already see myself spending a few months of concentrated effort understanding it. At first, it looks just like any other mystical script you might see in a fantasy setting, but after looking through it a bit, it is almost like a programming language. Well, not exactly like that, but you string words inside of your mind to essentially program the magicka to do something, which is close enough. After forcing myself through the driest reading experience of my new life, I headed to the practice ground and completed today's magicka exercise. The spells that the Archmage said we would have to learn don't seem to be too complex or demanding. There is the Heal, Lesser Ward, and Oak Flesh. A sensible choice for not dying in seconds, but I already know these, so I move on. We are also required to learn the base attack spell of all three main destruction elements, along with the Calm and Anger spells from the Illusion School. There is a note that the Conjuration spell will be given to us at the class for safety reasons. What does surprise me is the Mark and Recall spell book lying among them. After quickly reading through it, it does seem to have some limitations not mentioned in the games. The mark can only be placed on a pre-prepared spell circle, which is noted to already exist under the carpet of my room, and takes a whole 10 minutes to cast with it, sucking out the reserves of an average adept. It can be cast by someone with less magicka, but they would be bettered in for a good 3 days on average. Still, a very useful last resort to have in my pocket. The next morning, I spend chatting with my fellow apprentices while partaking of the holy caffeine. Today we will be having a lesson in conjuration, and Tiberius seems to be the most excited among us. The man has made it his mission to get an army of minions, even if it is the last thing he does. We all discuss yesterday's lesson with the Archmage, and I start complaining about how annoying and difficult the arcane script is, blowing it way out of proportion. The scared faces on most of my fellow students are a balm for my soul. Morgan seems to sense my bullshit, but stays silent, her eyes filled with mirth. /N. Playing around with Povs again. Do tell me your impressions. And yes, some of the college characters will be modified to better adapt to my headcanon of how powerful and odd master mages are. General POV. As the students enter the bottom floor of the Conjuration Tower, they are greeted by a balding, skinny, and old Breton man. The Conjuration professor feels like he has already died to rave in, but he wisely keeps his mouth shut. The voice of the man is a raspy and dry thing. Welcome, apprentices. He seems to take his time with every word. I am Phineas Jester, master of conjuring and necromancy. This man gives not a singular shit, huh? At this, some of the apprentices are startled, especially the Nords. The master necromancer raises his hand and continues in his monotone. Before you start accusing me of ancestral defilement, know that I take great care about who or what I raise, and can confidently say that all that have suffered at my hand have most assuredly deserved it. It takes him almost a full minute to say this, which seems to work in his favor, as everyone seems to have forgotten his introduction. Raven thinks otherwise, detecting the mass calm spell that hit them. The feeling of getting magically calmed is odd. You still have your thoughts, but it is almost as if the very idea of committing any kind of aggression seems foreign, which makes it even more scary. Yes, illusion isn't a waste of my time. After all, his thoughts are interrupted by the professor's continued speech. As you can see, I do not share the Archmage's flair for dramatics, so I will get to the core of the matter. Thankfully, he decided to speed up his speech, or they would be here all day at this rate. Conjuration is the art of binding spirits, or Daedra, to one's soul. Through the medium of a contract, you offer a constant trickle of magicka to the bound spirit, and are able to summon them at almost no cost. He demonstrates this by snapping his fingers and being surrounded by 5 different elemental atranacs. The amount of possible contracts is naturally based on your capability to produce or gather magicka, the former being preferable, as you cannot always guarantee yourself being in a sufficiently magically dense environment. He snaps his fingers again, and the atranacs are gone. Note that you are capable of summoning without a contract, but the magicka cost is comparably enormous, and there is no guarantee that something would respond. Or even worse, something beyond you does respond. He finishes ominously before waving his hand and floating a spell book to each apprentice. There are, however, 2 known spells that require minimal investment from you when it comes to conjuration. The first being the bound weapon, as it is more of a magicka shaping technique, which you bind to yourself. The other, being the one now in your hands, is the Conjure Familiar spell. The spell has some ties to mysticism, as it connects to your guardian animal, or spirit beast, or inner beast, and so on and so forth. The interpretations are as many as there are cultures on Nirn. What is important to us is that it is a very low-maintenance spell that grows alongside the potence of your magicka. It is an eternally loyal guardian belonging to you and you alone. Remember to treat it with respect. He looks at them with an unexpected seriousness. You will take half an hour to read through and understand the spell. You may ask questions, but please don't bother me with trivialities. He sits down and starts scribbling something down as the students get to reading. Raven POV. Apparently we have a lich professor, or at least that is what he feels like to me. I think as I start reading through the spell book, not really shaken by the fact. As long as he is civilized and doesn't bother me, I will give him the same courtesy. The Conjure Familiar is an introduction to all summoning spells, requiring a ritual to bring out the spirit beast and a simple contract to bind it. The ritual itself is rather simple, consisting of a potion to place you in a trance while you sit in a prepared ritual circle. After you enter said trance, you need to find your familiar and befriend it, which is supposed to be very easy, as the beast is made of your own essence. The half-hour passes in silence, with everyone being immersed in their work. We interrupted by Phineas. I hope you have all finished reading. After receiving nods from all of us, he continues, good. You will now all perform the ritual under my supervision one by one. He points to Boar first. He hesitantly approaches the circle next to the professor and takes the potion from his hands. After drinking, he folds his legs and sits in the circle. Nothing happens, and for a good 5 minutes, everyone is silent, until the howl of a wolf is heard and a large gray wolf materializes in front of him. After giving a reserved congratulations to the elated boar, he calls me forward. I take the potion and sit down. After drinking, I start feeling woozy and disoriented. Not even my third eye being able to bring me back into focus. Soon I find myself in a small park surrounded by concrete buildings. In front of me, giving me a curious look, there stands I find myself in a small park surrounded by concrete buildings. In front of me, on the branch of a tree, there stands a large ash-colored hawk. Immediately, I get the impression it is not a simple bird, as the tips of its feathers are constantly flickering with tiny flames. He, and somehow I'm certain it is a he, is looking at me with what I feel is patience mixed with a childish curiosity. Hey there, little guy. I hope you weren't too lonely waiting for me. I approach and offer my hand to carry him. He looks at me for a bit longer, then chirps happily and jumps on my shoulder, thankfully somehow not cutting it up. I start walking around what I now recognize as my old town, or at least the representation of it in my mind. The bird on my shoulder seems content to look around the unfamiliar place as I take my time reminiscing about my old life. Some minutes pass in silence before I turn toward my new companion. You seem to want to see far more than this dreary place. Would you like to come with me? He is immediately excited and nods rapidly, suddenly sprouting a bit of fire around him and scorching my robe. My eye twitches. Just for that, I am naming you Scorch. The damn bird has the gall to huff. Or well, the closest bird approximation to huffing. Oddly, he seems to not mind the name. He is just annoyed that I'm being pissy. How do I know this? It seems that we have formed an empathic bond. We can't quite speak to each other, but can understand each other's thoughts, which might even be better. He also seems to be as intelligent as a mortal child. I look around one more time, burning the memory into my brain, and finally turn to my new friend. This place is making me depressed. Let's get going. Scorch nods and pecks my shoulder, drawing a bit of blood. Soon he disappears in a cloud of ash, and I feel another presence inside of my Magicar reserve. After a couple of seconds, my thoughts become muddled, and I lose consciousness. Soon I find myself sitting on the ground with a weight on my shoulder. Scorch apparently joined me while I was getting my bearings. Phineas seems satisfied with my results and congratulates me before calling forth the next apprentice. The rituals take about half an hour before everyone is done. The presumed Lich speaks up. Good. At least you aren't incompetent enough to muck up meeting your spirit guardian. Now, to reiterate, your familiar will grow alongside your own magical power, meaning the more magica you have, the more the familiar can take for itself when you aren't using it. Familiars also have an added benefit of forcing your body to get used to constantly producing magica, so it can keep up with the consumption, meaning it will speed up the growth of your reserves. As you can see, it is a very symbiotic relationship, which is why you will treat them with respect, as they will never abandon you. We all nod. Everyone already feels the bond with their familiar, and would likely not be an ass regardless of what the professor said. Good. I recommend to all, if you haven't already that is, to get a copy of Arcane Ascension from the library. The added magica will be needed if you ever want to be even a slightly accomplished conjurer. For those of you who wish to touch upon the art of necromancy, do remember to study soul manipulation from the mysticism school, and keep in mind that only adepts and up are allowed to even attempt to try playing with the dead. Most of the students seem disinterested. Some are even offended, But oddly enough, there is a glint of curiosity on Marwan's face. Not long after this speech, the class ends, and I head to the library to get back to learning the arcane script. I am joined by everyone except Tiberius, who seems to be too taken with his first minion, a large saber cat, and is now rushing to buy her treats. On the way, I check my system notifications for the past couple of days. My reserves have grown alongside my mind, but the change is very gradual, so any larger advancements will take time. There is, however, something interesting. Conjuration Apprentice, Bound Weapon, Steel, Familiar Bond, Scorch. Summoning Bonds. Scorch, Ashen Hawk, a magical creature with an affinity for fire and ash. There is a great life force within, waiting to be awakened. Abilities can detonate into flames and ash, burning and blinding, all caught in it. Restores itself far faster than other familiars after being banished, an hour instead of day. Apparently Scorch is no mere fire chicken. I better not ignore his progress. If my hunch is correct, he holds ridiculous potential. General POV. The new apprentices of the college take their time walking towards the library, all of them talking about their new companions. The twins, surprisingly, or not, both got identical-looking wolves. Morrigan got a raven that seems to be able to disappear into shadows, which seems to please her greatly. Marwan got a very large white owl. Raven jokingly recommended him the name Hedwig, which he accepted, much to the elf's chagrin. Idrissa got a rather resilient-looking Nyx hound, which seems to weird out the humans, but the Dunmare have no such issues and were immediately taken by the little insectoid doggo. While the familiars are getting familiar with the place, the group of apprentices, after procrastinating for a good hour, finally get to studying the magic squiggly lines of doom, as named by our resident pyromancer. 3 hours later, everyone seems to be done with life and ready to tear the books to pieces, but one look from the old orc librarian is enough to spare the cursed piece of literature for now. Raven POV. After finally liberating myself of the foul text, I head toward the practice ground along with the rest of my colleagues for my daily, totally not cultivation session. Trying out for a bit makes me notice that my magicka has been greatly affected by its new resident. My aura now feels like a constant and gentle flame. There's also a soothing, revitalizing undertone to it. Checking my stats, it doesn't seem to have changed them in any quantity, so it must be a trait. Ashen Bond. Through your bond with Scorch, you attain greater control over flames and restoration. You also seem to heal just a bit quicker. I pop my mouth and say noise, making Idrissa, who is doing her own training nearby, look at me weirdly. She quickly shrugs and gets back to work, though. Growing up with Telvanni mages probably made her used to the utterly weird shit they tend to do. 2 hours later, being one step closer to becoming the young master of the ancient Dagoth clan, I start practicing my destruction spells in a nearby room. I experiment with changing the intent of the spell, even managing to make the firebolt slightly curve its flight path, and making my flames a much more concentrated line instead of a wave. But doing this takes far too much concentration to be useful in a fight. I keep myself from trying to add runes into the spell since it could end up very badly. I'll have to learn a tested method first. No need to burn myself both figuratively and literally. Finishing my pyromancy exercise, I start studying the other elements of destruction. Lightning sparks are rather easy to cast, being similar to fire, just with a lot more friction involved in the initial casting. It does, however, eat through my magicka far quicker. Ice, on the other hand, is an absolute nightmare. My affinity is mostly fire-focused, and trying to turn my magicka into ice is like trying to convince my grandfather that the Imperials are a good influence on Morrowind. 2 hours pass along with my futile efforts, the ice still beyond my grasp. I haven't felt this frustrated in a very long time. It is surprising how much this tiny failure angers me, so I choose to stop and cool down a bit. Trying to heal my bruised ego, I tell myself that I am still a student, and besides being good at everything would be boring. Yes, that is totally my excuse for not being able to cast a novice spell in my main school. Totally not sulking, I head towards the dormitory to turn in for the day. On the way, Scorch rejoins me and starts transmitting how much he enjoys his new friends, having flown around town with the 2 other birds. He immediately makes my mood go up with his mental chattering, One of the rare things I like doing in my old life is listening to my kids speaking about their discoveries, and his current behavior reminds me very much of that. So instead of sulking like a teenager, I put more pep into my step and chat away with my bird friend, motivated to try again harder tomorrow. So, how's House Telvanni these days? The Red Year and subsequent invasion was very hard on you all from what I've heard. I ask Idresa while having my morning coffee. She scrunches her eyebrows and takes a sip of her own drink before saying, "We have been rebuilding in Vardenfell mostly. Thankfully, a good number of our masters and magisters managed to survive the invasion by having teleportation spells ready when their defenses fell. The Archmagister and his family, however, were not as lucky and all died at the fall of Port Telvanni's. She seems actually saddened by this, odd considering the usual Telvanni mentality. Serves the slavers right, Bors snorts from nearby, his twin nodding in agreement. The look Idresa gives him makes it seem like she's ready to help his guts experience fresh air. He flames starting to form in her hand, remove any doubt. I turn to him and raise an eyebrow while holding Idresa's shoulder, trying to keep her from attacking. Is this how I should react if your entire clan and hold ever get decimated? He seems to regret his words a tiny bit before doubling down, an offended look on his face. So you would equate honorable defenders and Nords to a bunch of slavers? I give him an arrogant smile and say, what a grand and intoxicating innocence. The very idea that a bunch of Nords could be equal to a great house of Morrowind would be the funniest thing I have heard all day if it wasn't so God's damned offensive. Idresa, who calmed down enough not to commit immediate murder, nods sagely as if it was the most obvious thing in the world while the Nord twins' faces become red in anger. Things are about to get heated with Bor making a fist when we are interrupted by Tiberius. Come now, my dear colleagues, everyone is equal under the glorious empire. No need to fight amongst ourselves. Dude sure likes to preach, but seriously the fuck did he just say? Everyone turns to him and gives him a heated glare, but the fiery winds of our fury seem to go under his notice as he gives us a proud look, as if expecting praise. Me and my fellow Dunmare speak almost in perfect sync. Morrowind isn't even a part of the Empire, you Eswit and moi. Surprised, we both nod at each other and resume our glaring at the Imperial. Brienne adds in a sarcastic voice, yes, we are all equal, just until you need to throw one of us off the boat to save yourselves." Bors simply glares. Tiberius seems undeterred, however. No matter, the Empire is what unites us all. Each man, mare or beast, shall prosper under its guidance. While we have hit a bit of snag right now, it is inevitable that we shall reunite once more into one glorious state. Even Marwyn, who tuned us out earlier, joins in at this point with a tired sigh. Tiberius, be real here. The moment the Oblivion Crisis started, the Empire pulled out of Morrowind. He starts listing off other minor wrongs before getting to the biggest one. The moment they could save the Heartland from the Thalmor by sacrificing an entire province and one of our main deities, they did exactly that. At this, everyone nods in agreement. You have to admit, man, the Empire of today doesn't inspire even a bit of confidence. Besides, there's no dragon blood on the Ruby Throne. The young Imperial seems to falter a bit before straightening up again. You are right, of course, but we all need something to believe in. If we let the current hard times take us apart, we would undo all the work of the exact god you mentioned, and that of his descendants as well. The Nords and Marwyn seem to actually start thinking about his words and begin muttering amongst each other. Idresa and I, on the other hand, just look at them like they are idiots. While it is understandable that the best interest of Bretons, Nords, and Imperials is to be united, Morrowind has never fully accepted being under the Septums who had actual power. The Medes shouldn't even dream of ruling it. I do, however, respect Tiberius for not faltering in his belief. It is very difficult for one to hold to one's faith when the facts are very much against you. The entire conversation is interrupted as Morrigan slams the door of her room open, bags under her eyes, and starts glaring at us. It is 7 in the fucking morning. Will you all shut up? Her currently glowing hands tell us in no uncertain terms that this is not a request. After a couple of seconds of silence, she nods to herself, satisfied that the blessed silence is back and dispels the magic from her hands. "What were you even talking about that got you all so worked up?" she asks in a much more subdued tone this time. "Oh, just a bunch of kids who don't know what they are talking about advancing from casual to competitive racism. Nothing too bad," I say with a sagely voice as I float a cup of coffee to her with my minor telekinesis spell. Everyone turns to me and gives me the "aren't you shit-talking yourself right now?" look, but they at least don't seem to want to rip each other to pieces anymore. Marwin mutters to himself, "The fuck is competitive racism?" while scratching his head. I shrug, completely ignoring them, and get back to my coffee, everyone else following suit after a bit. I am soon joined by Morgan and Adresa. I turn to said elf and continue where we left off, so before we were rudely interrupted, I was going to ask what made your family decide to come to Skyrim. From what I know, your father is a Telvanni master. There should be land in Morrowind for him to rule. She shakes her head with an exasperated smile. My father got tired of all the blame that was being thrown around in the council, so he just picked up his possessions and moved here alongside our servants. He even called the entire council a bunch of brats. I am not sure how he survived that. She scratches her cheek, a genuinely confused expression on her face. At first, the Jarl was very reluctant to give him the rights to grow his tower, but after a good 30 years of honest business and no incidents, and with the previous Jarl's son who was more open to magic taking the throne, he could no longer be denied. I raise my eyebrow at this. The new Jarl doesn't hate magic? I heard all manner of stories, but this one I didn't expect. Seriously, Career's only dialogue in game is bitching about mages. I guess he offended someone he shouldn't have? Morgan joins in, a lot less cranky after some coffee. I have heard around town that when a Jarl was killed in a bandit ambush, a college mage saved him and his mother. He is too young to rule, so the mother is acting as regent for now. Idresa nods, confirming the story. Suspicious, but it benefits me, so what do I care? We continue speaking about less serious topics for a bit until it's time for us to get moving. We have restoration and mysticism today. After our little debate, we all headed for the Tower of Restoration. The tower itself looked very simple on the surface, but its aura was the most beautiful when compared to the others. Surrounded by a gentle golden glow, it gave me a feeling of peace. The inside almost reminded me of a hospital waiting room. Everything was orderly and clean, and there were even half a dozen residents from Winterhold waiting for some kind of treatment. As we enter the classroom, we are greeted by a short Breton woman. She is not quite young-looking, but there is certainly a vigor about her. The best way to describe her is that she is in such perfect health that it is noticeable. She waits for us to sit down patiently and starts speaking in a calm voice. "Welcome, apprentices, to your first restoration lesson. My name is Colette Marantz. I am the resident master of restoration, and I also work alongside our alchemy professor when he is coherent enough to do his job." She notices that she has started complaining and gives us an embarrassed look. That took a whole 2 seconds, just when I thought she wasn't as whiny as she was in the game. Anyway, forget that last part. What you will learn here is far more powerful than any firestorm or enchantment. You will learn how to save yourself and others, how to stop bleeding, heal cuts, and even regrow limbs. There are also some other important branches of restoration used for self-defense like wards and solar magic. The ward are taught by my colleague Talfdir, as he has a fascination for them, but I personally teach solar magic. Now I'm sure that at least some of you know a healing spell or two. Would you care to show me? We all introduce what we can do with restoration. All of us can make a ward, but that is to be expected. When it comes to actual healing, only Morgan, the twins, and myself know the basic healing spell. Good. Do you have experience using it, or do you just know to cast it? After our confirmation, she points us toward a side room. There are some guards with minor injuries that didn't want to waste potions. You can heal them up while I show the rest the basic principles of healing spells. I do have a schedule to keep. We enter the room and get to work. There are some 7 guards covered with what looks like scratches and cuts made by wild animals. As I get to healing the first guard, I notice that the healing spell is not as draining as before. The magicka seems to change its nature with more ease than when I was using it earlier. Thanks, Scorch. He sent me a smug-sounding chirp. This time I focus on understanding how the magic works, while also looking at it directly. The positively charged magicka seems to be working with the body to recreate the destroyed tissue completely. It doesn't split the cells, it creates them. After trying to guide my magicka in a more precise manner, using the basic knowledge of medicine I have, the cost of the spell is reduced by almost a third. Neat. Quickly finishing up with the guards, who seem far more grateful to my human associates than me. Fucking assholes, we get back to the main classroom, where we see the rest of the class casting very flimsy versions of the heal spell. Colette sees us and levitates us a couple of septims each. Morgan and I just nod and place the money in our pouches, while the twins look at her confused. The master healer sees this and rolls her eyes. Always remember, we are healers, not priests. And, not waiting for a response, gets back to looking over the rest. Sometime later, when everyone got the spell to at least an acceptable level, Colette resumes her lecture. As you could feel while casting the spell, the basis of restoration is channeling positively charged magicka. Whether you do it to heal wounds or harm things of a negatively charged nature matters little. The principle behind it is the same. That is the case for the lower level spells in any case. The higher levels of healing specifically are more akin to permanent alteration of yourself and others. A true master of restoration can even reverse aging to an extent, but the requirements for this are immense. Otherwise, we wouldn't have idiots turning into liches. Well, I know what I'm going to study. After a short pause, she continues. Solar magic shares most principles with the destruction school, so I will leave that for later classes. When it comes to more advanced healing spells, there is a requirement beyond magicka. In control, you have to understand what you are healing, which means having a very advanced grasp of anatomy. If you wish to continue studying restoration, you'll have to spend much of your time studying bodies and what they are made of. Most of my colleagues are not very enthusiastic about it, but I can already see who is going to be coming back here. Morgan because of the money, the twins because it is their family tradition, and finally me because dying is cringe. She takes a bit more time explaining the basics before the class ends. The Tower of Mysticism's atmosphere is far more, well, mystical, like there is something hiding in every corner, not in the scary sense. It felt like it wanted to show me things that are just beyond my sight. I dearly hope it wasn't blessed by Hermias Mora. The inside of it seemed like it had been arranged specifically to produce some kind of mood, but the specifics of it evade me. We quickly reached the classroom, and what I saw made me almost faceplant. A tiny albino Argonian with blue lines accenting his scales, wearing a bright blue, wide-brimmed, pointy hat, and robes of the same color covered in golden stars and crescent moons. The others' reactions are more subdued, but everyone shows some level of surprise. It doesn't end there. As soon as we quietly sit down, we are assailed by the cutest fucking squeaky voice imaginable. Good day, students, and welcome to my mighty domain. I am Shalazar, the mysterious master of mysticism. My brother and Daggett, who the fuck made you? Under my magnanimous teachings, you shall learn to defy space, trap souls, ignore logic, and even bend time itself. He waves his hands around like a conductor while explaining, but first you must learn to protect your own essence. We can't have you getting enslaved by Deidre and the like now, can we? He raises an eyebrow of his oversized red eye. To explain our purpose for today's lesson, we must first set a firm foundation in our minds. Mysticism, the art of the Sijic, the ancient way, all these are words used to describe a mix of magical manipulation, instinctual insight, and symbolic ritualism. Mysticism is a school of magic meant to be lived instead of studied. You must let your mind wander and find itself once more to truly set yourself on the path of a mystic. He clears his throat, and even that makes a squeaky noise. There are two main aspects of mysticism that you will learn under my guidance. The first is the ancient art of manipulating magicka. Before some of you say something inane like, "Oh, glorious teacher, we already manipulate magicka," I don't mean it in the simple way, but in such a complex manner that you may teleport yourself or levitate in the air. The other aspect is the ritualistic arts. By holding a magical ceremony in a precise fashion, you may bring permanent changes to your own nature. At this, he points us to a corner of the room that no one noticed until now. It is covered in a magical circle. I managed to recognize some of the symbols, and it seems to say something along the lines of soul-aware protects sense, and more words that I still don't understand. The now surprisingly serious lizard wizard speaks up again. Today, unless you are unwilling, you will go through the essential ritual named as such, for it guards your essence, or soul, against outside influence lacking your consent. No one seems to be reluctant, so he goes on, keep in mind that rituals are a very precise art that comes with great risk. This one is among the rare exceptions, as it has been reworked time and time again over the years. This doesn't, however, mean that you can relax. Once you enter the circle, you must feel your soul as soon as possible. And once you do, you will be able to consciously reject almost any outside influence upon it. Marwan raises his hand, and once Shalazar nods, he asks, how do we know when we have felt our souls? The mystic shrugs and asks, if the ritual is made so you may touch your own essence, do you truly believe that the feeling is something you can miss? Marwan seems dissatisfied with the answer, but remains quiet. Shalazar claps his hands and starts calling us one by one. I am among the last, so I get to see what happens, and I will be honest, it is really underwhelming. Most of them are done in seconds, and none seem to be in any distress. Finally, it is my turn. I sit down cross-legged and channel my magicka into the circle. I suddenly feel something touch a very deep part of me, and said part seems to remain in my perception, and I feel that it will never go back to how it was. New system function created. Binding actions will now require a confirmation through system prompt. Yes. Fuck you, Daedric dickheads. No tricking me into dumb bullshit curses for you. I didn't know what to expect from the ritual, but this did put a smile on my face. After we are all done, the almighty and resplendent lizard wizard waves us all off and simply levitates through the window to do whatever it is he does when he isn't spreading his wisdom to the mortals. We all quickly get out of our stupor and leave to heal our minds from whatever the fuck that was. General POV. Getting themselves together after experiencing what must have been a creation of Shiagarath, the apprentices left to spend the rest of the day studying or relaxing. Raven was about to go do his daily magicka grind when Boar interrupted him with an interesting offer. Hey Raven, I heard you got into some fights on your way here. You think we could get some practice in? Said Elf raised an eyebrow and asked, and what would this practice entail? There is a dueling room in the Hall of Refinement that allows us to have a magic fight without risks. I hear the ward stop any lasting damage. Raven nodded in realization. Yes, the Archmage did mention something along those lines. I am not surprised there is a room for it. Besides, the more combat-oriented among us need somewhere to get experience. Precisely. So you in? Sure. The two were quickly joined by Brienne and Morgan, who were curious about who would win. The Nord girl was sure that Raven was about to get turned into a popsicle, but Morgan scoffed, as if the idea was ridiculous. They got to one of the combat halls, and just as they were about to begin, an annoyance-filled voice interrupted them. And what exactly are new apprentices doing in here? It hasn't even been a week, and you already want to blast each other to pieces? Behind them, at the door of the room, was standing Faralda, the Altmare Master of Destruction. Raven quickly responded to stop any misunderstanding. No, we came here for a bit of exercise. Learning new spells is good, but if we cannot use them in battle, they are useless. The tall, elven woman nods with a satisfied expression. You would be surprised by the lack of students who share this opinion. All the idiots think that if they have enough magicka, they can just win without issues. Well, until someone stabs them, that is. In any case, I am curious as to your capabilities, so I will stay and watch. Do give me a good show. The smile she gave them implied that failing would not be wise. The two nodded and turned to each other, slowly raising their hands. Raven POV. As I was getting ready to blast my fellow student, I was surprised by a quest prompt. Quest issued. Defeat Boar decisively. Reward. STR 0.4, Dex 0.6. I was going to start going on morning runs and training anyways, but this is a nice bonus. Well, no holding back then. I quickly cast Oak Flesh and prepare to make wards with my left hand. In my right, I start summoning Scorch. When Faralda signals us to start, we both spring into action. Boar summons his wolf and starts throwing ice shards at me. Trying to conserve as much magic as I can, I block them with the smallest wards possible, using my third eye to predict their path better. This exchange goes on for a bit. His wolf seems to be holding back and waiting I send Scorch to fly above them and start throwing firebolts to make them forget his presence. We go back and forth, exchanging spells. I take the time to slowly get closer until I decide to finish this and launch a wide flame spell to blind them both. Boar quickly shields himself and is familiar, but that is all the time I need to summon my saber and charge him, wanting to prevent any retaliation. As I rush him, he starts casting frostbite at me to slow me down and commands his wolf to attack. But at that moment, my fiery companion that they thankfully forgot about launches himself at them and detonates in a large fireball. The wolf is dispelled immediately and Boar staggers back, but that is all the time I need to put my sword on his neck. Quest completed. He seems irritated that he lost, but still raises his hands in surrender. We hear a slow clapping sound behind us, and turn to see Faralda with a satisfied smile on her face. Good. You both have some skill, at least enough not to shame us outside. After she says this, she gives us a bit of criticism. Boar, you need to show more aggression and use your familiar more. It cannot really die, so better to use it like your colleague did. Raven, you did mostly all right, but that last charge was unnecessarily risky. It would never be justified in a real fight. You might have cast some defensive spells, but all it takes is one lucky shot, and you are dead. I nod. If it wasn't for the quest, I would have just ambushed him with Scorch when he got tired out, but it did require a decisive win. Faralda tells us to sit at the side of the room, and turns to the girls. Now the two of you should give it a go. Since I am here, I might as well see what you can do. Brienne is about to protest, but the smile that covered the Altmer's face as soon as the thought entered her mind makes her shut up. Their battle is far more drawn out, and not to toot my own horn, a lot less exciting. Morrigan is able to keep Brienne and her wolf at bay with her cryomancy and entangling spells, but her own familiar is not very combat-oriented, so she is basically fighting 2-on-1. They exchange spells for some time until they start to get tired, and Morrigan is quickly ambushed by the wolf, making it her loss. Faralda gives them some criticism as well, mostly about conserving their strength and making distractions, so they don't just throw blasts at each other. After she is done with them, she calls us all back to the center of the room and speaks in a calm but ominous tone. You have all shown at least some promise in combat magic, so I will give you a free lesson that all battle mages must learn. A sadistic smile spreads on her face, and I know we are fucked. Your first lesson is dodging, and the whole room explodes into a storm of spells. 2 goddamned hours. She kept blasting us for 2 whole damn hours. Poor Brienne looks traumatized. Boar is too tired to say anything, and Morgan regrets ever leaving her cave. Thankfully, none of us were actually hurt, since the room was made for this purpose, but we all felt every blow. We did actually start dodging a bit at the end, but I'm sure that this was more for our dear professor to blow of some steam than it was for our benefit. The damn destruction mage gives us a cheery wave as we leave the dueling room. Fucking madwoman. I turn to my companions and say with the last bit of energy I have, I think I will recommend some dueling practice to all the rest of our class. If we suffered this, the rest aren't getting excluded. Everyone shares a devious smile, and Morgan cackles a bit madly. We quickly get back to the dormitory, and, ignoring our friends' worried looks, all rush to our rooms and crash into our beds. Why is half of the damn college filled with madmen? What should I expect next? A fucking muscle wizard. Before I close my eyes, I check on my progress in the past couple of days. STR 7.1 equals 7.5. Dex 9.4 equals 10. Vit 8.5 equals 9. Mind 16 equals 16.5. Mag 140 equals 145. Destruction Apprentice plus Sparks. The next morning after the torture session disguised as an impromptu lesson passed peacefully, I spent some time chatting with the twins about the holds of Skyrim and the geography of the province. Never know when the information might come useful. The two were somewhat knowledgeable, but they mostly spoke about Dawnstar and its surroundings. The rest of the morning I spent trying to finally levitate, and I did manage to get myself a meter off the ground, only to faceplant a second later after my concentration fell. But progress is progress. Our first lesson for the day was alteration and defensive magic that Talfdir was teaching. I remember liking him in the game. I always did find it odd that he was passed over for the position of Archmage after the college quest line. From what I learned since coming to the college, a couple of words from a Sijic monk is nowhere near close to getting one to become Archmage. Not to mention who in their right mind would allow another organization to influence their internal structure. The Alteration Tower was a lot tamer when it came to the openly magical effects, or its aura. There was a feeling of constant fluctuation and change to it, but nothing too imposing. We all took our seats, and not too long after the old man entered the classroom, he looked much like he did in the game, average height, white hair and beard, the usual old Nord look. But when I looked at him with my ability, he felt like a huge and indestructible rock more than he did a human being. He gave us a cheery smile and started talking in a kindly voice. "Welcome, dear students. I am Talfter Ebenfrost, the master of alteration and defensive magic. I am glad all of you managed to get up for classes today." At this, he looks at the four of us that suffered yesterday. I guess that rumors tend to spread fast in a small place like this. We all nod, traumatized. After our enthusiastic agreement, which he seems to not notice, he continues, "Alteration is the magical art of changing the material world." He takes a coin and turns it into dirt. It is also the school that deals with manipulating elements of a less destructive nature. At this, he controls the dirt to form into a needle and uses a wind blast to launch at the wall. Terramancy and Aromancy. I always did wonder why there was no word of them in the game. He goes on, "The most important, in my opinion, is the ability to defend ourselves. Alteration is capable of being your armor and your shield." At this, he casts an ebony flesh spell and demonstrates by failing to pierce his hand with a steel knife. After that, he summons some kind of wind spell around himself and explains with a proud smile. "The Wind Ward spell is one of my own making. It makes a cocoon of wind around you and shields you from most physical projectiles." You might be wondering why I'm showing you all of this. The answer is simple. While I know most of you will never focus on alteration on a more permanent level, being able to survive in this dangerous world will let you actually learn what you wish. You can't do what you want if you're dead. I'm not saying this because this is my class, but I recommend all of you to come back again to learn how to protect yourselves. And I believe him. He really does sound like he just wants us to be safe. He gives us a couple of seconds to think about his words and resumes the lecture. The other part that I will be teaching in this class is wards. Wards are, as you all know, magical constructs that are primarily used as a personal shield against magic. I cannot stress enough that you should learn at least a steadfast ward before you leave for any journey. While this part of them is important, know that there is much more to wards than that. Combining them with ritualism and enchantment wards can be made semi-permanent or even permanent, depending on the catalyst, and the effects can range from large shields to lie detection, to even temporal dilation in extreme cases. For today's lesson, I will teach you how to cast the Oak Flesh spell if you don't know it, and to those that do, I will teach you a trick that lets you use it to strengthen yourselves in battle. The class passes quickly after that, with Talfter patiently explaining the novice spell, pointing out mistakes, and showing us how to channel the spell more thoroughly through our muscles. I leave the class with a smile on my face. Alteration Apprentice, empowering Oak Flesh. We all take a break between classes, and since apparently I'm the one with the most experience with becoming a tree man, everyone starts asking me for tips about the spell. I don't mind this and help anyone who needs it. It's a low-level spell, and they might pay the favor back someday, or not. Honestly, I don't care all that much. They're a bunch of kids, and this might help them not get gutted. The time soon comes for our illusion lesson. The tower is as trippy as when I first saw it. It is really fucking with my senses. At one moment, I am in a tower. The next, I am floating above the sea of ghosts. I turn off my perception as to avoid showing everyone what I had for breakfast. We all sit down and start waiting and waiting and waiting until finally a white-haired Dunmare appears at the teacher's desk and winks at us. "Ah, good, you are all just in time." Everyone gets annoyed at this, and Morgan tells him, her voice dripping with irritation, "We have been waiting for almost half an hour. How are we just on time?" The illusion professor smirks. "You thought you were waiting for that long, but in truth you were sitting there for a whole minute." Many gasps are heard. Indeed, this is the true power of illusion, the ability to lie to one's perception. He fake gasps. Oh, by Azura, I didn't introduce myself. Dravis Nellerin, Master of Illusion at your collective service. He gives us a mock bow. I really don't like him. Now let us begin. What is illusion magic? I almost think he will go the same route as the Archmage did, but he quickly cuts off my thoughts. It is the skill of using magicka to cheat the perception of either the world or a number of individuals. Indeed, if one is skillful enough, one might convince someone that they are dead and thus make it so in truth. He raises his hand up high, as if he is preaching. Fucking drama queen. But you all are much too young for such deeds, so we will start you all at the basics. Today I will teach to you the two core spells of the Illusion School, the Calm spell and the Enrage spell. One will keep you out of fight, and the other will help you start them. Come now, let's get to it. He snaps his fingers, and there's a copy of him in front of every one of us. Every single clone seems completely autonomous and able to explain things to us, but I note that they don't seem corporeal, still useful though. The spells themselves are rather basic. You channel an emotion you wish replicated, basically ram it into a weaker-willed person, profit. We spend about an hour getting the spells down until it is time for us to leave. Dravis looks at me with suspicion and a bit of hate. I guess he learned my full name. Thankfully, he is forbidden from spreading the information, or I would be getting visits from the Woodsman's Guild real soon. With that encouraging thought, I head to do my master routine in the Hall of Refinement, and after finishing that I check out a novel in the library. Might as well enjoy an old hobby. We spent most of the next morning trolling each other with the illusion spells we learned. That is until the Master Wizard heard of this, and basically dragged us all to our destruction lesson. The four of us that experienced Feralda's training earlier knew we were fucked. Our little group of victims started brainstorming a way to escape from our dire fate, but unfortunately by the time anyone had any kind of good idea, we were already in front of the tower. We marched inside, as if awaiting our funeral, the remaining 3 students blissfully unaware of what awaited us. Knowing that they would join us gave me a bit of petty satisfaction, honestly. The inside of the tower looked rather simple, not less opulent than the other towers, just a lot more robust. The aura, on the other hand, felt like a raging thunderstorm, somehow combined with an inferno. The classroom lacked any chairs, and was instead equipped with practice targets, obviously enchanted to high hell. Faralda was already inside waiting for us. She nodded to Mirabelle, who soon left, and then turned to us. Good you are all here. I am glad that some light exercise wasn't enough to stop you. I know she is fucking with us, but I really want to kick her shit in. I will explain everything quickly so we can get to the practical section of a lesson. And there is the sadistic smile. Destruction is the magical discipline of using unstable elements to cause damage. It is in its application the simplest of all the magical schools. You point at something, channel, and boom. Problem solved. She scoffs. At least that is what idiots believe. Destruction is an art like all the other schools of magic. While the base application is in fact rather simple. Using destruction magic efficiently during combat, which is its main purpose, is something that must be honed like any blade. Learning destruction spells is by far the easiest among all schools, but learning to cast them in a respectable time frame while not wasting magicka under the pressure of combat is by far the most difficult. Being a master of destruction doesn't mean being a scholar of magic, but being akin to a sword master in a magical sense. Nodding to herself, like she just crossed something of a list, she turns to us and her aura changes to the one I remember. Now let's see if I can make respectable warm mages out of you. Surprisingly, she didn't go for the torture routine this time. Well, to some of us it was torture, but I train my magicka daily, so repeatedly expending almost all of it while trying to channel my spells as efficiently as possible was already routine, and that is exactly what she had us do for 3 hours. I could hear some grumbling about no fireballs from Tiberius, but he quickly regretted it as he received the full attention of our teacher for a whole 20 minutes for that remark. I will remember you, my friend. Everyone else chose to keep any complaints to themselves after she used the non-magical side of her destruction skill to make the poor Imperial almost cry. Dude will be avoiding mirrors for some time. During the lesson, I did manage to solve a problem that has been bothering me for some time. When I asked Faralda about my lack of progress with ice magic, she explained it rather easily. What you're having an issue with is that you have been casting mostly out of instinct until this point. In my raised eyebrow, she continues, there is an issue that is known to plague some talented mages. They tend to cast spells using feelings or instincts. While this is not a bad thing for the spells you have an affinity with, attempting to cast a spell if the opposite affinity will have very poor, if any, results. What you need to do is cast the ice spells mechanically, without any influence except pure mental instructions. It is true, I have been trying to feel the ice while casting. Simply cutting off my usual habits and casting felt very counterintuitive and took me almost the entire lesson, but by the end of it I did manage to let loose a weak but steady frostbite spell. Everyone who knew of my problem congratulated me. Even our sadist of a teacher seemed satisfied, and I left the class a happy mare. Destruction Apprentice plus frostbite. After the class, we all took a break to grab something to eat. Even if I did persevere through the whole thing, it was still exhausting. Marwin looked almost dead, Tiberius was dead inside, and the rest of us were differing levels of tired. I left some time later to do my usual daily grind. This time I tried focusing on my familiar bond while using fire or restoration spells. It did make things a bit more efficient, but nothing too world-breaking for now. The evening I spent on the walkway on the college's walls, meditating on the words of power. I knew that learning even the simplest of shouts would take time. I am not a Nord, and I am certainly not the Dragonborn. Thankfully, my family is known to have some affinity for music, which in this universe usually means tonal magic, something that the Thursdayam falls into. So, I still held out hope even with my lack of progress. After some time getting nowhere in my meditation, I decided to stop wasting time on TIID and try going for something I understood on a more instinctual level. Faralda did say, I did things mostly by feeling, so this might be worth a try. I breathed in and out slowly, getting more relaxed, and started meditating on the meaning of fire, how it felt, and what it represented. I went through all the metaphors I ever heard about it, simply letting them float through my mind, while at the same time, I focused on the feeling the aura of fire gave me. It took me some time until I took one final breath and spoke, somehow knowing that shouting at my level was a very bad idea. Why, well, the air around me shimmered and heated up, a small but potent flame leaving my mouth. I immediately felt myself get exhausted and my breathing grew heavy, but I proved to myself that I could do it even if the effort that I had to invest would be immense. Realizing that I could barely move, I sat down on a nearby chair and started dozing off while looking at the sea of ghosts, Scorch sitting down on my lap to warm me up. Thankfully, the college would stop any harsh winds or the cold air from getting in. Otherwise, I would be spending the next month in a sick bed. I was woken up by someone lightly slapping me. Opening my eyes, I saw Morgan looking at me with a mix of worry and annoyance. Did you finally get a visit from Shiagarath that made you decide it was a good idea to take a nap on the college wall? I took a second to fully wake up and grunted. I may or may not have exhausted myself to the point of not being able to move while practicing my Thursdayam. She looks at me incredulous. You're what now? The Thursdayam, Dovizol, at her still confused look, I say the language of dragons. Still nothing. I sigh Nordic shouting magic. This time she gets it and nods. And how by all the gods did you manage to almost knock yourself out by practicing? Are you worried about me? She scoffs but doesn't deny it. I smirk. It is a very demanding magical, or some might say divine power. The reason I took a premature nap is that using one word, not even fully, exhausted me more than Faralda's lesson did. She raises her eyebrow. Did you at least manage to get something useful out of it? I scratch my head. I made a bit of fire. And now she is looking at me like I am an idiot. Do you not make more than a bit of fire every day? Why, yes, I do indeed. Thank you for noticing. I say drilly, but this wasn't me using magicka to cast a spell. This was me using the strength of my soul to command the world to create fire. I get a confused look. Isn't that just adding a lot of extra steps to something that you could do anyways? To be fair, I was at first trying to learn the first word of the slow time shout, but obviously manipulating time in any way is far more demanding than making fire, so I thought I might as well start with baby steps. Spew fire today, stop time tomorrow, or something like that. She shrugs her shoulders. Whatever, that is not why I found you anyways. Idrissa and I are going to visit the town for a bit. She wanted to show me around, and I thought you might want to come with. Sure, let me just take a quick bath. Didn't really have the time for it yesterday. She doesn't say anything, but if the wrinkling of her nose is anything to go by, she most definitely agrees. I get up feeling oddly energized with Scorch jumping on my shoulder while giving me an annoyed glare because I woke him up, and I start walking away while checking if I got anything from my stunt yesterday. Trait gained. Aspiring tongue. You have taken the first step on the road of a tongue, an ancient art lost to most. Kind blesses all who follow her teachings, even if they aren't her creation. Vit. 9 equals 10. Hell yes. After freshening up, I left my usual clothes for washing and for the first time actually wore my college robes. They were very basic, being a simple light blue robe with the college emblem on the back. No weird poncho thing on it either. There was a weak heat-regulating enchantment on them alongside a basic Magicka conductivity one. Nothing too wild, just there as a teaser to make us work for more, I guess. Finishing that, I called Morgan and Idrissa, and we left for the college gates. Today's gate guard, I still don't know why they do that if they have wards, was Talfdir, who greeted us with his kindly smile and asked us to deliver an enchanted sword to the captain of the guard, as he was too busy doing whatever it is he had to do while guarding the gates. Finding no reason not to, we accepted and went ahead. Seeing as it was the weekend, most of the townspeople were taking some time off, making the town look a lot more lively than when we first arrived. We spent our time visiting the different shops, and I got to experience once more the grueling torture that is waiting for women doing clothes shopping. Dear Robert, take me back. I desire this new life no more. After what felt like hours, but was really just 20-ish minutes, they finally decided to get one thing each out of the 15 they tried. My left, I was twitching violently, and by the look on Morgan's face, she knew very well what she was doing, so I chose to have a bit of revenge. Casting a quick enrage spell on her, I made her immediately shout angrily at me, making everyone look at her like she was a wild woman, and immediately after that I cast a calm spell, making her look even more unhinged. Everyone started slowly stepping away from her, with Idrissa looking incredibly embarrassed. Morgan shook the spell of after some effort, and started looking at me like she was about to teach me all about what they do to their briar hearts in the Reach. But I simply rose my hand with a new enraged spell, and she chose peace. We spent some more time walking around, waiting for Morgan to cool off until we sat down at the inn to have lunch and some drinks. The locals, for the most part, didn't seem too put off by our presence, but there were still some drunks spitting or just talking shit in general. However, one reminder that they were in pyromancing distance made them bugger off while whining about unnatural mages. After our meal, the two started discussing clothes again, so I decided to complete the little errand Talfdir gave us and headed for the Jarl's Keep. The inside of the stone structure was very cozy. The main hall had one big fireplace surrounded by tables, with the far end being occupied by the Jarl's throne, upon which the previous lord's widow was currently presiding over some minor dispute. I approached one of the guards, and he pointed me to a side room. Inside, I was greeted by the sight of a tall Nord wearing a more decorated guard uniform. The normal uniform being a steel lamellar armor covered in a winter-hold tabard, while this one had some glowing runes on it. After noticing me, he waved me forward and introduced himself. I am Jolmer Ebenfrost, the captain of the Winterhold Guard. How can I help you, mage? I am Raven, a new apprentice at the college. Master Talfdir told me to deliver this sword to you. I introduce myself as I hand him the weapon. He nods in satisfaction while checking out the blade. Ah, good. I have been waiting for my blade for an entire week. How is the old man these days? I shrug. I only really met him during our lesson, but he seemed lively. He smiles, and I continue. I hope I am not being too nosy, but seeing as you two have the same clan name, are you perhaps related? He waves his hand as if to tell me not to worry. It's no real secret. The old man is my great-grandfather. The Ebenfrost clan has been one of Winterhold's staunchest protectors since before even the Septims took the Ruby Throne. Interesting. And are you a clan of mages, or is it mere coincidence? I ask, noticing his rather strong magical aura with my perception. He raises a surprised eyebrow. Oh, and what makes you think that I am a mage? I smile and say nothing. He snorts again. It's no real secret. Yes, the Ebb and Frost have been mages for a very long time. Talfdir is the current patriarch, but he really doesn't spend much time outside of the college. In any case, since you did us a bit of a favor, is there anything you might need? I scratch my chin for a bit. I did start neglecting my melee skills since coming to the college. You think I could join some training? He nods, sure. You wouldn't be the first mage to ask for training with us. We hold training sessions most days at dawn. If you want to join us, simply show up. I will give you a pass for it. Anyway, what do you want to train in? I am competent with a sword, but I also want to learn the spear. He nods and writes it down, sure. We'll be seeing you on Mornda's. Tomorrow is a free day. I nod and give him a wave as I leave. Rejoining my two colleagues, I am pleasantly surprised that they have moved on to more interesting topics, like ending lives through magical means. After enjoying that particular topic for a bit, Morgan speaks up. Idrissa has been talking about her father's tower, and she asked if we'd like to visit one of these days. I turn to Idrissa. The master won't be bothered by us visiting? I know how Telvanni mages can be, so better not step on any toes. She waves off my concerns. He could be a bit grouchy, but I don't think he will mind. With a shrug, I say, sure, it will be interesting at least. Better get my levitation up to snuff. General POV. The day after their outing passed with Raven following his usual routine, he did try meditating on the words of power again, and this time chose to try whispering the word instead of speaking it. It did help as he didn't fall on his ass immediately, but even a whisper was still exhausting. He did get into another practice duel with Boar. This time they were thankfully not interrupted by their destruction teacher. He came out the victor once again, with no rewards for it, unfortunately. Focusing a bit harder on his levitation spell, he managed to keep it up for a good 5 minutes, which was enough for him to get the spell on his menu. Mysticism Apprentice, Arcane Ascension, Levitation. Mornda's began a bit differently than what he got used to. Instead of leisurely drinking coffee in the morning, Raven went to visit the local guard for his combat training. The guards themselves were rather welcoming, and some even praised him for not being a little milk drinker like the rest of the mages. The exercises were hard, but he managed to persevere, earning some more respect from the mostly Nordic guard force. After the warm-up, as they called it, he was given an iron-tipped spear, and they had him do basic drills and stances for a good hour. After that came some light sparring. He did make a new friend, a young Nord lad named Thorfinn, who was incidentally his sparring partner for most of the time. He seemed very angry at everything, but after a couple of bouts, he was too tired to be a whiny teen, so they struck up a conversation about Raven's adventures and shared a drink. The tiresome morning didn't go without its rewards. Spearmanship Beginner, STR, 7.5 equals 7.8. Dex, 10 equals 10.2. Raven POV. As I left the guardhouse while checking my progress, I couldn't help but smile. My growth was going quite well. I should have a chance to not die instantly when dragons come. I jest, of course, by the time old Alduin is here, I'm going to be ready to blow him to pieces. Maybe. Probably. On my way back, I grabbed some roast horker a young Nord was selling on the street. I've already spent most of my morning with the guards, and today's alchemy class starts very soon, so no lunch for me. I rejoined my colleagues in front of the lecture hall. The alchemy and enchantment lessons are both held there, as they don't have their own towers. Most of the students seem to lack any kind of enthusiasm for this, and I don't blame them. Chemistry was never my thing, and this wasn't much different. Thankfully, I already do have some basic alchemy skills. This doesn't, however, mean I like doing it. Morgan, on the other hand, seems super eager to get to it. The moment she learned she can sell some of the higher-tier potions for ridiculous prices, she was hyper-focused on studying it. I'm not sure how she endured waiting for over an entire week, but she did. We were joined by our restoration teacher, Colette. She did say she worked with the alchemy master. I hope she was overblowing the part where he was always barely coherent when teaching, but I'll have to wait and see. Not long after we arrived, a red guard man entered the hall. He seemed unfocused and smelt very heavily of grass. Yeah, I already see where this is going. He slowly waddled to the teacher's desk, with Colette already looking like she was about to cry, then turned to us and gave us a smile that only a man not really there can give. Hey kids, you want to learn how to cook? I think I could hear crickets, somehow. Judging by his face, he must have imagined us giving a jubilant an enthusiastic response to his question. Excellent. Today, Haken will teach you how to make that sweet blue liquid that we all know and love, the Magica potion. At least it will be useful. How do they even let people like this teach? Right then, why don't you all grab those mountain flowers and ground them for a bit? After that, you can toss that together with some lichen or spiky grass or something and boom. Magica potion. Not waiting for any response, he pulled out a pipe filled with something that was definitely not legal and proceeded to light it up while completely ignoring us. Colette face-bombed and started explaining the actual recipe, which was, to be fair, pretty much what Haken had said, just with more details. Let me rephrase that, just with actual details. It took us all a couple of tries to get the ingredients in the right proportions, but we all managed it. After we were done, we turned to the professor, but the man was out cold, surrounded by a cloud of smoke. His unfortunate colleague had to teach us the health potion on her own as well. Poor woman. I couldn't help myself anymore and asked her, "How exactly is that?" I point to the alchemist, allowed to teach here. She lets out a sigh for the nth time since we arrived. He might seem completely worthless now, but the man is an absolute genius with alchemy. He managed to create about 10 cures for obscure diseases and even perfected a regeneration elixir. Elixir, a potion giving a semi-permanent effect. Even if I don't learn how to brew those, it's nothing money can't solve. White file plus elixir. Interesting. Ah, I see now. I guess I will just treat him like an idiot savant or something. It will be easier on my psyche. I join her in a collective sigh and return to my health potion. Thankfully, they decided to teach us the two most important recipes on the first lesson, because after this showing, I am definitely not returning for round 2. Most of the others seemed to share my feelings. Even if they did learn something incredibly useful, this was a bit much for most people. Morrigan, however, didn't seem to care in the slightest. I could almost see the dollar signs in her eyes. Our grumblings were stopped when Haken suddenly stood up and abruptly walked to each of us to check on our potions and started giving out ridiculously precise criticisms of everyone's work. Dude was able to identify how hard someone ground the flowers by looking at the finished product. He spoke with such a manic intensity, some of the others actually got scared, which made me laugh my ass off internally. The alchemist noticed what he was doing and suddenly stopped and muttered to himself, "Damn, my immunity is growing again. Gotta perfect the recipe," before he rushed outside to Daggeth knows where. We were all dumbfounded for a solid minute, until we finally got out of our stupor and started packing. I spied Colette in the corner, taking a swig of something that looked a lot stronger than mead. Can't really judge her here. Teaching restoration and dealing with this must really grate on the psyche. An interesting thought did enter my mind as I left the hall. Magic-boosting cigarettes. Definitely a project for the future. I dodge a knife flying toward my face, the guards around me, and my opponent cheering at our admittedly low-level fight. Thorfinn clicks his tongue and goes to strike me with his sword, but I am getting better and better at the subtle art of dodge. We dance around each other for another minute until I grow bored and decide to cheat a bit. I thrust my spear one-handed to distract him, and with my other hand I stealthily cast the empowering oak flesh spell Tolfter taught me. He seems to notice it, but it is already too late as I explode towards him and ram my full weight, which is admittedly not all that much, into him. He falls to the ground, and I place my spear's tip next to his head and go to help him get up. "You cheated." He seems more irritated at the fact he lost instead of at my use of magic. "Is it really cheating to use all your skills in battle?" I say teasingly as I hold out my hand. He shakes his head and grabs it. The guards disperse, and the captain approaches us and gives us a subdued clap. "Good fight, lads. Thorfinn, you need to be more decisive. I know you don't want to take too many risks, but if you don't press your enemy, you won't be able to use any opportunity you make, as you have seen." The young man nods. "As for you, Raven, I get that you're a mage and all, but you are here for combat training, and you also seem a bit too passive for my liking." I shrug my shoulders. True, but it's not like I am wearing armor, and I would have to cast that spell anyways if I ever wanted to get close to anyone in a straight fight. He snorts, and the fact that the defensive spell also boosts your strength has nothing to do with it. Of course he would know. He shakes his head. "In any case, it is good to get experience fighting mages. Besides bandits, crazy necromancers, and the like are the usual pests we have to deal with." One has to wonder if they're coming out of the woodworks these days. I scratch my chin for a bit and say, well, there are those necromancer cults that seem to be literally everywhere except the east of Tamriel. Thorfinn interrupts, and why not the east? I hum and say, the hiss that the Argonians worship, or are a part of depending on your sources, is very controlling, to the point that they counter-invaded the Daedra during the Oblivion Crisis, so any necromancers would probably get slaughtered quickly. They both nod at this, as it is widely known that Black Marsh kicked massive amounts of Daedric ass during the invasion. When it comes to Morrowind, we practice ancestral worship, quite literally, so raising the dead is quite sacrilegious. There are S-wits that do it still, but they are usually visited by a rather well-equipped lynch mob. The young Nord still seems a bit confused. Don't most peoples worship their ancestors in some ways? They do, but not at the same level as the Dunmare. We all have shrines in our homes from which we can summon our ancestors for guidance. They can't stay long or they go mad, but still we hold our dead in the greatest regards. Isn't that just necromancy, though? He asks in a careful voice. I wave him off. Not really, since the ancestors are willing, and it is a religious practice of honoring the dead instead of abusing them. Jolmer interrupts our conversation. While listening about our neighbors' traditions is riveting and all, I do have a job to do. See you lads tomorrow, and walks away. The two of us sit in silence for a bit until I speak up. You should learn some low-level spells, might save your life in the future. He clicks his tongue and says sarcastically, oh yeah, with all the money I've saved up. I roll my eyes. I was just going to show you a couple and give you the instructions, but if you're going to be a little bitch about it, sure. You'll just keep my wizardless secrets. He gets up abruptly and gives me a light glare. Who are you calling a little bitch, huh? I also get my ass off the ground and summon my saber and grin while saying challengingly, what are you going to do about it, little bitch? He gets pissed, and we start another spar. Since we have enchantment in the evening, I chose to do my daily mana grind, as I started calling it earlier this time. The channeling of magicka through my body is becoming easier and easier. This does help with using it more efficiently, but it is also slowing down my progress. I feel like I can boost my reserves quite a bit still, but there will come a point when using this technique will become pointless. My third eye seems to be sucking up more and more. I really hope that there will be a benefit to this later. Urag did say that everyone modifies the process as they practice it. I'll have to do some reading later. A bit later, as I meditated on the word of power for fire, my thoughts drifted to a recent change I seem to have developed. Since I first started practicing the Thursday I have started enjoying open spaces and the feeling of the wind against my skin more and more. My guess is that the blessing of Kine is more literal than what I originally thought. Might help me with aromancy when I started out, so I don't mind it one bit. As we all funnel into the hall of lecturing, we are greeted by a bald imperial man of average height. He looks us over and notes something down on a parchment. He talks in a very gravely old voice, like you would imagine a lifelong heavy smoker having. Good evening, apprentices. I am Sergius Tyrannus, the master of the art of enchantment. He then asks if anyone present has experience in enchanting, and we all answer one by one. Me and most of the others are capable of identifying modern enchantments, but only Idrasa and Marwyn have actually enchanted something. The master nods slowly and says, the two of you will help your colleagues out for this lesson. What I'm going to be teaching you today is the basics of the enchantment process. I have found that the best way to get the first lesson through into the thick head of youngsters is some practical experience. The main two ways in which enchanting has been done for the past millennia are the more basic rune carving. Carving runes onto objects allows the user of said object to channel magicka into it to produce an effect, like, say, a warrior's sword launching an arc of fire. The more powerful way of enchanting is through the use of soul gems alongside rune carving or stitching runes in the case of clothing. By using a soul gem, the artifact produces its own power and can even be used to boost the wearer instead of the other way around. What you will learn today is how to enchant a basic magicka absorption power onto a necklace. What you need to do is carve the provided matrix onto the round surface of the jewelry, and then crush the soul gem provided while channeling its power into the item. And almost as if on demand, a silver necklace, some carving tools, and a common soul gem appear on our tables, alongside a diagram drawn very precisely on a parchment. As we all get to work, I take some time to look at the diagram and its design. It seems to be written in the general arcane script and is made of the words essentially explaining how the absorption process works organized in a circular fashion, some of them repeating at multiple points. I take my time slowly and carefully chiseling away at the necklace, coming to the realization that this is actually quite relaxing. The others seem to disagree, as I see people straight up break the necklace by swinging too hard. Poor Boar seems to panic, but the master reassures him that they are easily replaced and does exactly that by summoning a new one. It takes nearly an entire hour for it, but I finally get it done. Sergius notices this and nods in approval. Good. There are some minor misalignments, but the enchantment will still work. Now use the soul gem. I nod and slowly crush the surprisingly soft gem above the necklace. Grabbing the energy it releases with my magicka is hard at first, but my unique perception helps me keep most of it contained as I channel it into the necklace. Sergius once more notices this. Good, excellent. You kept most of the gem's power and your channeling is very precise. Keep going, it will finish soon. I do as I am instructed and focus on pushing the rest of the soul's power into the now glowing necklace. Soon an ethereal sound is heard and the enchantment settles. The master seems happy at my success. Most promising indeed. You may keep this necklace. I would hate for such a good seed to die to a random spell. Magic shield get. I smile as I thank the old man, and he goes to look at the other students' work. Most of them are still stuck at the carving bit, and I do notice Morgan giving me an annoyed pout while sitting in front of a butchered pile of silver. I chuckle as I go to help her out. This enchantment business might actually be quite fun. The rest of the week passed in relative peace. I would visit the guardhouse in the mornings and work my ass off. Thankfully, I could already feel some results. Abusing restoration to speed up training was apparently a thing, and there were very few drawbacks. I also managed to get the reason why Thorfinn seemed to be constantly pissed. Apparently, his father, who was also a guard, got ambushed by a group of pirates he was trying to negotiate with, and now the kid feels powerless to take revenge. Hopefully we will hunt the bastards down, as if I needed any reason beyond looting the shit out of them. Within the college, all of us got into a kind of routine. The more combative among us would spend some time dueling or practicing every day, while the more creative were constantly trying to get better at their desired skill. Well, everyone had a routine except Tiberius. The man was constantly trying to find any way to increase his magicka capacity in anticipation of his glorious legion, as he called it. I also spent a bit of time every evening meditating on the Thursday. My progress was minuscule, but it was there, and the whole meditation part of it was getting more and more relaxing, which helped me with the stress of constant study and training. Finally, Frida's Friday arrived, and we were going to choose the 3 schools we would study for the first year. Everyone was a bit dissatisfied by the limitation, but the Archmage was apparently very adamant about this, so we could only accept it. While understanding why it was in place, I was also irritated by the limitation. There were many things I wanted to learn, but realistically, I knew that it would take maybe a month to burn myself out by studying everything. After pondering this for some time, I chose to focus on doing my damn best to survive. The more complex and esoteric schools can come later. Well, I at least thought so at first, but remembering the ease with which I managed to enchant my necklace, I just had to choose enchanting as one of my schools. As for the others, illusion was a no-go. It would be useful and could help me avoid fights, but at my skill level, it wouldn't be too helpful. It was always going to be a side thing for me. Mysticism was very interesting, and I could already see the mad shit I could potentially do with it. But I also know that truly understanding mysticism is a very time-consuming process and better left for when I have the luxury to study it patiently. Conjuration was absolutely busted from what I understood. Being able to summon a squad of magical monsters at a whim is definitely a very enticing idea. However, unfortunately, when I think of being powerful, I imagine personal power, and conjuring a bunch of minions while being a squishy weakling myself is just a massive turn-off for me. I had my flaming bird of death in any case. Or was it life? Alchemy. While it could be interesting at point was an instant rejection, I would probably be able to ignore the professor's bullshit for a couple of weeks maximum. While I did want to study restoration at first, with Scorch's help I could be more powerful in using it. I realized that it would also be a very time-consuming thing to study. Currently, I have enough skills with restoration and alchemy to keep myself from dying like an idiot, so restoration is also getting delayed, unfortunately. Alteration is a definitive yes. The defensive spells and general buffs are the perfect addition to any kind of battle strategy one am used to, and Tofter also mentioned that he would be teaching us how to use alteration to mold metal for our enchanting if anyone was interested, after hearing that it wasn't really a choice anymore. And finally, destruction. While placing myself under Feralda's gentle care was not an attractive prospect, the school itself wasn't merely learning new spells and throwing them in a straight line. She would teach us battle tactics and how to fight other mages, and that was invaluable considering the turmoil that was going to hit the province. Besides, being a wizard without a fireball is just sad. I spent the rest of the day discussing the choices everyone made with my colleagues. Unsurprisingly, Morgan went for the full moneymaker route, choosing alchemy, enchanting, and alteration, with everyone else also focusing mostly on their initial ambitions in coming here. The next morning after finishing my training, instead of heading back to the college, I started walking toward the Telvanni Tower looming at the edge of town. We have finally decided to visit Adrace's father's tower, mostly to check out the staves in my case, but visiting a massive mushroom was also a fun prospect. I met the two in front of the tower, apparently named Telmoabane after the Master's clan. They were currently animatedly discussing something until they noticed me. Morgan looked at me with a raised eyebrow. Are you sure it's wise to go in just after you finish your training with the brutes? I roll my eyes. They have baths at the guardhouse. I'm not an idiot. Idrasa interrupts us, hoping to stop a potential bickering match. While my father has been informed of our visit, he will most likely not bother with us for too much. Our talk is interrupted by the annoyed and pompous voice of an old mare. Oh, and why exactly would I not bother with interesting new visitors to my tower? Idrace's eye twitches, but she hides it very quickly. She turns toward the presumed Telvanni and introduces him to us. Allow me to introduce my father, Durin Moabine, master of the House Telvanni, and then speaks to him. I thought you might be busy with another one of your retainers. I didn't want to disturb you, she says within a fake sweet voice. The old mare glares at her for a second, gives a fake cough, and completely ignores what was said. Who have you brought to my home, daughter? She shakes her head and starts introducing us. This is Morgan, a reach woman. Apparently she didn't like the living arrangements and decided to leave, said young woman, looks very irritated by her story being spread randomly, but says nothing except a subdued greetings to the master of the tower. The old wizard looks at her with interest. Oh, how very intriguing. If you have some time later, I would love to learn more about the Reach Mages. What do they call them? Yes, the Hags. Or something. Morgan seems somewhat unwilling, but not being an idiot, she agrees rather quickly. Idrasa then turns to me. This is Raven, another of my colleagues. He seems to be the most talented among us new students. I even heard some teachers praising him when they thought we weren't listening. I interrupt with a raised eyebrow. This is the first time I've heard of this. Idrasa giggles. Well, of course, you spend every waking moment doing some kind of training or study. I scratch my cheek, I do, don't I, and turn toward the Telvanni master, giving a slight bow. It is an honor to meet you, Sergio, noble sir. He seems very satisfied by my proper conduct. Quite. It is good to see more young Dunmare seeking true power. Far too many spend their days on lesser pursuits these days. The last bit is said while giving his daughter a light glare. Well, we did lose most of our farm tools in the recent years. I say jokingly, trying to diffuse any potential family drama. He chuckles for a bit, indeed, and then waves us toward the tower. Follow me inside. I will have a meal prepared, and we can discuss a bit about your studies. Idrasa seems surprised by how welcoming her father is, but still follows along. We are shown to a dining room at the bottom of the tower. Durin quickly orders one of his retainers to get a meal ready, and we all take our seats. We spend most of the afternoon partaking of some imported kwama dishes and talking about our studies. At my mention of my apparent enchanting talent, Durin interrupts me with a glint in his eye. When you are done with your initial studies, you can visit me for a lesson or two in staff making. Before I can answer, I am interrupted by a telepathic message. Naturally, there is a price for this. You will do your damnedest to keep my daughter from getting herself killed on one of your college's idiotic outings. I ponder for an entire half of a second before nodding. I would be honored, Sergio, there might be tension between them, but he is still her father. He hums for a bit and gets back to listening to Morgan complain about the alchemy master. Later on, we are shown around the nearby staff shop that Diran owns. The staves are pricey, but their effects are many and powerful. Having spied one I like, I decide to save up for it in the coming months. Our little group leaves the tower in the evening, all of us mentally exhausted for different reasons. While listening to Morgan complain about the 300 inane questions about her gravens she had to answer, I call out Scorch to my shoulder and start scratching his head while pondering the coming trials. After the visit to the Telvanni wizard, Ryvin settled into a monotonous, if exhausting, rhythm. Most mornings were filled with grueling exercises alongside sword and spear drills, making his arms feel like they were on fire. It was not without its rewards, however. Raven no longer looked like the usual elven mage Twig, but now sported a lean, yet muscular build. He also realized he prefers the spear to the sword, the longer range being far more comfortable to his mage mindset. Thus, he focused a lot more of his time on mastering it. His reputation among the guards also rose, as they expected him to give up after a couple of days of training, his perseverance having impressed them. After the morning fun and a good meal, the classes would begin. Thankfully, the schedule was very relaxed, with him usually only having one lecture a day, even if they all lasted for hours. From his enchantment lessons, he learned how to carve runes into different metals with more precision, and also a trick to add runes to clothing without the tedious stitching. He did have to learn how to manipulate souls, so he can use the gems better, which helped his mysticism along. As his first task for the college, he aided the enchantment master with preparing a shipment of swords for the Solitude legionary garrison. The pay was very lucrative, so he splurged a bit and bought a full padded armor and chain shirt to go with his robes. Tolfter taught him how to better use alteration to directly empower himself, as well as a more powerful ward and telekinesis spell. And as he promised, he showed a technique to shape metal using magic. When Raven asked why this method was not as widespread, the old alteration master explained that while it can be used to shape the metal, it was only really useful for jewelry, due to the forging process being necessary to make the metal useful for making weapons or armor. Raven also asked about the transmutation spell, but Tolfdir said that while he did know it, he would keep it to himself until the young students proved themselves responsible enough not to abuse it. Morgan, who was also present for the alteration lessons, got pissed at this, but Tolfdir merely explained that this was the exact reason why he refused them. After some time, they were also taught the Windward spell that should be of use against archers. The Destruction lessons made him yearn for his morning physical training. Each time Faralda would force him to push his Magicka reserve to its breaking point, and when she was done with that, she would drill combat tactics and spell-casting techniques into his head. Raven almost regretted signing up for this, but he knew he was growing in skill and power, so he grit his teeth and bore it. He did make great progress in his destruction skill. Reaching the low adept level upon throwing his first proper fireball, Scorch seemed a bit put off that his gimmick was now obsolete, but he also seemed to be growing a bit in the past months, so it wasn't all that much of a bother. Raven decided to take some focus from his pyromania and try and master some lightning magic, as its projectiles were far faster, if a bit weaker. The lightning bolt and greater sparks soon joined his repertoire of spells. Naturally, as any man of culture, as soon as he got his sparks to a sufficient level, he found himself screaming about unlimited power while torturing a poor practice target. Even Scorch looked at him weirdly for a time after that scene. He didn't simply let his restoration training lag behind either. While he couldn't really get more complex spells, he did practice his usual healing and got it to work faster. The arcane ascension technique seemed to reach a limit for a time, no longer improving his Magicka reserve. But his third, I was still devouring a lot of Magicka, so he kept at it. After 3 months of this, his head started itching like mad, and he felt like a barrier has been broken when it comes to his bloodline. He now seemed to be able to predict the movement of others by half a second. When he asked Urag about where to go next with his exercise, the old orc first made him do it in front of him, and with a surprised tone, congratulated him on setting a record for mastering the technique by a large margin, which made him grin like a child. The gruff librarian then explained that he needed to let the new power settle in before adding elementally charged magicka to the process. When asked about how long the settling would take, he answered that it should be at least half a year. Meditating on the Thursday also seemed to slow down after the initial push. He did still progress enough to speak well instead of whispering it without knocking himself out, but shouting it without risk still seemed very far off. It was still a very relaxing process, and Raven found himself spending entire evenings just sitting on the college wall and enjoying the wind. Raven's colleagues were all progressing in their own studies. The Nord twins would join him during battle mage training, and after finding out about him, learning from the guards, they also decided to do it. Marwyn was spending more and more of his time studying the soul, and when he thought he wasn't being watched, he read up on dark rituals. Thankfully, he still seemed to hold his passion for enchantment and was progressing there as well. Morgan was going completely wild with how much she learned about alchemy. The madwoman even caught the eye of the alchemy master, who started teaching her with more attention whenever he wasn't higher than the Red Mountain. Idrisa seemed to be satisfied with merely being a passable student, only really getting interested when altering people through restoration or alteration was the topic. When that was the case, she would excel. Finally, Tiberius continued on with his single-minded focus on conjuration, and surprising everyone, actually made a contract with a group of 3 scamps. The little Daedra were not powerful, but they could use pyromancy at a low level. In his gleeful mood, he challenged Raven to a practice match so he could show off, but was quickly returned to Nirn from his high horse with a lightning bolt to the face. After a bit of dressing down from the Dunmare, he finally accepted he would have to actually learn how to fight. During early evening star December, the young elf also celebrated his 17th birthday. And now, 4 months after joining the college, Raven was getting ready for his first serious outing, joined by the Nord twins. As they were waiting for the briefing, he checked his progress with a satisfied look. Name, Raven Aus Daggeth. Age, 17. Race, Dunmare. Birth sign, Mage. STR, 11 Dex, 12.5. Vit, 14. Mind, 20 Mag, 210. Mage. Destruction Adept. Searing Flames. Penetrating Firebolt. Frostbite. Greater Sparks. Lightning Bolt. Fireball. Restoration Apprentice. Fast Heal. Steadfast Ward. Alteration Adept. Empowering Stone Flesh. Metal Transfiguration. Wind Ward. Mage Light. Telekinesis. Illusion Novice. Calm. Enrage. Conjuration Apprentice. Bound Weapon. Steel. Familiar Bond. Scorch. Mysticism Apprentice. Arcane Ascension. Settling. Stable Levitation. Minor. Soul Manipulation. Enchantment Adept. Rune Carving. Identification. Soul Imbuing. Alchemy Apprentice. Basic Potions. Warrior. Swords Apprentice. Spears Apprentice. Thief. Stealth Novice. Traits. Fireblood. Born under the flames of the Red Mountain, you are blessed with 50% resistance and 20% damage and control toward fire. Ashen Bond. Through your bond with Scorch, you attain greater control over flames and restoration. You also seem to heal just a bit quicker. Blood of Daggeth. You descend from a mad religious extremist who nonetheless achieved a degree of godhood, providing you with a prolonged lifespan and the third eye trait. Awaken Third Eye. Your blessed perception has been further improved through your efforts, now granting you the ability to predict the movement of others while enhancing your magic sight. Aspiring Tongue. You have taken the first step on the road of a tongue, an ancient art lost to most. Kind blesses all who follow her teachings, even if they aren't her creation. Minor Blessing of the Warrior. You seem to learn how to fight in melee a bit faster. Minor Dunmare Paragon. Dunmare will tend to have a good impression of you. The 3 apprentices are joined by Talfdir after waiting for a bit. The old Nord sits down and starts reading through some documents, and after a minute or so speaks up. You 3 have requested to be given a task that would have you possibly engage in combat and risk your life. Are you sure you want this? The 3 students nod seriously, and the old man sighs. Kids these days, no patience at all. Very well, there is one such request from the Jarl himself. To the west of the hold, near the mountains, a couple of homesteads have been raided by unknown attackers. They took no loot except some tools. But the most concerning part is that there were no bodies found, and there are indications that prisoners were taken. He takes a moment to look at them for any sign of hesitation, but is disappointed. You are to join the group of 12 guards that are being sent to investigate. They were going to go on their own, but after some advice from the court wizard and confirmation from Master Shalazar, it was decided that some mage support would be needed. Your mission is to investigate the disappearance and, if possible, recover the prisoners. Naturally, any perpetrators are to be put to the sword. He says the final part with surprising harshness. The reward for this request is 500 septims each, alongside a public commendation from a Jarl, if you manage to recover the victims alive. The Nord twins seem excited to help their people, probably hoping to prove to themselves and other Nords that mages can be a force for good. Raven, on the other hand, is currently stuck brainstorming the possibilities. The only three conclusions he comes to are either bandit slavers, Famr, or a Thalmor Justiciar raid. The last one is soon crossed out, as they are usually far more overt in their religious persecution. They like to make a point. He scratches his chin for a bit, noticing a bit of stubble there with some surprise. Before he speaks up, the only two realistic possibilities I can think of are either bandits or Famr. The twins seem surprised by the latter, but Talfter takes it more seriously. And what makes you think that Famr might be involved? Think about it. It is said that Blackreach is hidden somewhere beneath Mount Anther, and the only living inhabitants of Dwemer ruins are Famr, who are known to take captives and brainwash them into slavery. Even Talftir shows open disgust at this. Indeed, what you say could be true, but we don't have the time to have Master Shalazar confirm it. All he did say was that mages would be needed. Raven nods and says, "We will need a lot of antidotes, provided to the guards as well if possible. I hope it's just bandits, but if we're to be facing Famr, we need to be ready for poison in large numbers." Bor asks, his voice skeptical, "And how can you be so sure of this?" The young elf shrugs. "I am a massive nerd. What can I say?" All of them chuckle for a bit before Talftir turns serious again. "I will inform Jolmer to have his men carry antidotes and extra potions. As for the two of you," he turns to the twins, "I hope your restoration lessons taught you how to neutralize poison, because if you get into a lair of Famr, antidotes won't be enough." The two nod with some confidence. "Good, I want all of you to stock up on some other potions as well. Remember to not save them and use them whenever you feel like you might need them. Your life is far more valuable than some ingredients." He turns back to the elf. "Now, Raven, I am sure you already know this, but Famr are known to be vulnerable to fire. I want you to abuse this and make sure you all come back alive." Raven gives a reassuring nod. "Of course. I will not allow any of the blind and was to kill my friends," avoiding any mention of how the guards were completely ignored in the equation by the both of them. Thalfdir seems satisfied with this and gives them each the documents to present to the guards and wishes them good luck before leaving them to plan. Looking over his colleagues, Raven asks about their equipment and defensive spells. Thankfully, both of them are from a warrior clan and came to the college with some medium armor alongside basic weapon training. They both chose the destruction, restoration, and alteration combination that they were already planning on. Having been tutored in the basic spells since young, they were already sufficiently competent at them. They weren't at Raven's level with destruction and alteration, but the Dunmare was blatantly cheating every moment he could, so that wasn't surprising. They spent a good hour strategizing and reminding each other of what they needed to take with them. All three scrounged up some money to have Raven enchant a poison resistance ring for all of them. Even if they didn't get to fight Famr, these rings will always be handy. Raven spent the evening with Master Sergius, doing his best to make the rings as strong as possible. The enchantment teacher seemed very worried that the young mare was risking his life for no good reason as he saw it, but Raven would not relent, and the old man could only sigh and wish him luck. The next morning they all said their goodbyes to the rest of their group, with Raven having to deal with an annoyed Morrigan complaining about him running off to save the poor children once more, but it was more of a routine at this point for the both of them. He packed quite heavily, with multiple healing, stamina, and magicka potions, and an entire bottle of potent antidote, alongside some cold resistance potions. Remembering the trip to Winterhold still made him shiver. He thanked every god he could think of for the enchanted robes he got. On their way to the Jarl's keep, he also bought a steel-tipped spear that matched his height. The smith that sold it even wished him luck and gave him a discount. Apparently, rumors spread here as fast as they do in Whiterun. The group of young mages soon found themselves joining a group of guards in full heavy armor, readying themselves to move out. They were all recognized from their training sessions and were welcomed to the group. Holmer soon joined them and inspected their documents. After a bit of questioning and checking if they were prepared, he pointed them to the short senior guard that was to lead the expedition, whose name was Thorgrim. The gruff old Nord was polite enough and had them all fall into formation with the rest. Not long after, they left the walls of Winterhold behind. The morning the company of guards and mages set out was thankfully a relatively warm one. The snow was as always annoying to walk on, but at least they weren't getting facefuls of it. Early into the march, some of the guards removed their helmets, and Raven was surprised to see that Thorfinn was among them. He noticed that the young man is nervous, so he decided to fuck with him for a bit to help him ease his nerves. Didn't know you would be joining us. Since when do the holds send little boys in a battle? He teased his friend. Thorfinn grew red in the face. I am old enough to fight. Sure you are. Raven gave him a mocking smile. Can you even hold that shield for more than a minute? I remember you using that tiny toothpick in your offhand when we sparred. The nearby guards snorted or chuckled. I swear to sure, Raven, I will kick your shit in. The young man really did look like he was about to start kicking, but they were interrupted by Thorgrim's gruff voice. All right, kiddies, keep in your pants, who then turned to Raven. You elf boy, said Elf, raising an eyebrow. The captain said there was some reason or another for us to lug so much damn antidote with us. Said you would explain. So nice of him to volunteer me. Raven said in a sarcastic voice before starting his explanation. There's a good chance we will be fighting Famr. They're known to use poison and are usually accompanied by massive poison bugs. The senior guard seemed unsurprised, likely asking for the benefit of his subordinates. One of whom couldn't help but ask, Famr, is that some kind of weird elf? Raven lightly face-bombed, really. Some of the guards were laughing at their confused friend, but a larger number shared the confusion. The young elf sighed. Before your people came to Skyrim, the dominant race was the Famr or Snow Elves, a bunch of Oriel worshippers, or Akatosh as humans know him. Before he could be interrupted by an outraged guard, he continued, No, I do not care that you think they are not the same, and neither do the Edra. Let me continue before I sick my bird on you. Seeing the rather large, smoldering hawk appear on the elf's shoulder, the guard wisely shut up, much to the amusement of his comrades. Cough, where was I? Ah, yes. It is not known who started the conflict, but long story short, the Nords under Iskermore brought the Famr to near extinction. The defeated elves sought refuge with their underground cousins, the Dwemer, who being completely ruthless bastards enslaved and blinded them. Fast forward a couple of eras, and the Famr are now degenerated to the point of being blind, slightly magical goblins. The curious guard seemed to regret his question, appearing queasy. Even those who already knew the story were uncomfortable. One of the other guards soon asked, And what about the prisoners? If, as you say, they're basically goblins, does that mean they ate them all or something? Raven shakes his head. No, it is far worse. They are known to brainwash and enslave their prisoners. I don't know how they do it, but somehow they make them fanatical servants after some time. Everyone present suddenly turns serious, with the senior guard saying in a steely tone, Well then, boys, we better get moving. Closest homestead is half a day away. Hop to it. They make good time and are quickly greeted by the sight of an empty cluster of Nordic longhouses. Thorgrim speaks up. All right, lads, I want all of you to look for clues. The attack happened 2 days ago, so there might still be tracks. Everyone spreads out, but Raven stops his two colleagues. You think you wolves could sniff out the attackers and catch their tracks? Boar thinks for a moment and answers, Well, they could, but we would need something with a strong smell for them to follow. The elf nods, ill-informed the captain. It took them most of the afternoon, visiting 4 different empty homesteads. Every group of homes they visited made the guards either disheartened or vengeful. No one made any jokes anymore, and the march felt more like a funeral, whose funeral was yet to be seen. Thankfully, on the ground near the 4th site, they found the remnants of a skirmish with some small humanoid tracks and a severed ear. Raven sighed as his suspicions were confirmed. Yup, that is definitely a Falmer ear. Everyone turned serious at this and started preparing, spreading potions and antidotes around, and securing their armor. Boar and Brienne got to work having their wolves remember the ear's scent. Raven was left alone with his thoughts for a moment. It is very odd for Falmer to raid in such large numbers. They usually only grab a couple of people and are rarely so overt. Are they just growing more bold, or is there a greater reasoning behind the attack? Shaking his head and accepting that there's only one way to find out, he sent Scourge to scout around in case of predators or other annoyances. It wouldn't do for them to never reach the Falmer after all. Following the wolves for a couple of hours, they found an icy ravine going into the side of the mountain. Both of the familiars showing absolute certainty that this is where the prey went. Thorgrim had them sit down for a short rest and a very light meal. It would be pointless to die because they were all too tired and hungry from the search. Scorch soon returned and said that there were no other threats around, while the young mages, joined by Thorfinn, were huddled together and preparing mentally for what was to come. Raven snuck an extra ring of poison resistance he made to the young Nordgard and told him to put it on under his gauntlets. The young man was about to protest, but thankfully Thorgrim ordered everyone to get ready, so he shut up and put the ring on. After following the ravine for a bit, they were met with a cave. Small Falmer effigies were erected on the sides of the entrance. The atmosphere turned ominous, and everyone steeled themselves. Soon they plunged into the darkness, the mages casting light spells and guards readying their shields. Everyone knew this was not going to be easy.
Hello, everyone. As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500+ novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.